The story opens with a man standing alone atop a hill made of dead bodies, asking Luo Wei why this fate had been forced upon him when they had once fought side by side like true brothers through countless battles. Luo Wei answered by taking him back to the start of the disaster, when strange cracks tore through space and monsters poured out, spreading destruction across the world. These cracks later became known as dungeons, and anyone who encountered them awakened strange abilities called classes. Because of this, the class core was created to clear the dungeons, and for a time, victory followed them wherever they went. Luo Wei then fixed his cold gaze on the protagonist and said that this very success was the reason he had to die. The man had grown beyond control, as class users with overwhelming power could shatter the Empire's balance, and someone who had surpassed even SSS rank was the greatest threat of all. Ultimate authority, Luo Wei claimed, had to stay with the royal family, because only then could the Empire survive. Burning with anger, the protagonist demanded whether this so-called order justified the murder of his family and allies. With a cruel smile, Luo Wei replied that everything he had done was for the Empire's future. Before the protagonist could react, Luo Wei set off a massive blast, revealing that the armor had been sabotaged long ago. The explosion also released a deadly poison straight into his wounds. Luo Wei was confident that after a battle between SSS-ranked beings, the protagonist would be too drained to fight back. To be absolutely certain, he had even surrounded him with an entire army, calling it a final act of respect. As his life faded, memories of his time with Luo Wei surfaced one by one, and in that instant, his hidden skill, Mirror World, finally met the requirements to awaken. Mirror World was an SSS-ranked hidden ability, a terrifying power capable of turning everything back to the beginning. After his death, his body vanished, and his soul sank deep into a silent lake. Many years later, two boys were abusing another child, tying him to a tree and forcing his head beneath the water. One of them slammed a fist into his stomach and ordered his friend to push him down again. As they continued, they laughed cruelly, mocking him and saying they would leave him underwater longer if he kept acting tough. His struggling face amused them, and they planned to drag him out only to beat him again afterward. The boy was reaching his limit and could no longer hold his breath. He wondered why pain always seemed to find him and no one else. At that exact moment, the dormant soul of the protagonist began to stir. A thin boy wearing glasses rushed over and shouted at the bullies to stop, warning that the boy would die. One bully sneered, turning around and saying that if he was dying, he should just heal himself, since that was what a chanter was supposed to do, even though he knew it would not help. He then accused the boy with glasses of pretending to be kind, reminding him that he was the one who led them to their victim in the first place. If the boy died, he said the blame would be his. Panicking, the boy with glasses tried to explain that he had only done it because he was threatened. This response only made the bully angrier as he raised his fist to strike him. Suddenly, something unnatural occurred, and a blinding light burst out from the surface of the lake. Screaming in fear, the bullies ran away, shouting that a dungeon had appeared and that they needed to escape before it was too late. The boy with glasses ignored everything else and stared at the boy in the water. Realizing he was still submerged, he sprinted toward the rope, knowing that if he did not act immediately, the boy would die. In that instant, the water in the lake vanished as if it had never existed, and terrifying creatures began crawling out from the empty basin. The boy with glasses hurriedly worked at the ropes, trying to free the trapped boy. While his focus slipped, one of the monsters suddenly leaped toward him. Without hesitation, the tied boy grabbed his clothes and yanked him away from the incoming strike. He then raised his hand and instinctively released a skill known as Glacial Impact. A system message appeared, stating that basic heal had been cast on Minor Demon A, but the skill failed because the target's health was already at maximum. The boy with glasses froze in shock, unable to understand why a healing spell had been used on an enemy. When a monster rushed in again, he quickly formed a shield, barely stopping the attack in time. As the protagonist checked the status screen, he saw the name Yun Shay along with the Chanter class listed beneath it. He immediately understood that he had cast a healing spell and that this body did not belong to him originally. Under normal rules, touching a dungeon bound a person to the system and granted a random beginner class that could never be changed. From there, people grew stronger by clearing dungeons and unlocking skills tied to that class. Yet he had once been a warrior who stood at the very peak of power. In his final moments back then, he had activated the skill Mirror World. After that, his soul was sealed within that strange space until he heard the desperate cry of the drowning boy. Only then did he realize that he had been reborn inside the boy's body. The situation was far from ideal, but he was still grateful for the second chance and silently accepted it as an opportunity for revenge. The boy with glasses quickly warned Yin Shay that monsters were closing in from all sides and beg for help, admitting that he could only hold off 3 of them at most. Yun-Che could immediately feel how frail this body was, as even the weakest monsters were far beyond what he could handle. With their speed, escaping was impossible, and running would only lead to his death. When he checked his skill panel, his heart sank, as every ability listed was nearly worthless. Basic Heal could only restore 1 to 4 points of health, while Entangling Vines merely summoned weak vines with a low chance to restrain a single enemy. The Chanter class was far too narrow in purpose, strong only in support yet inferior in every other aspect. It was no surprise that people treated this class with contempt. Relying only on his past battle experience, Yun-Che could barely hold on for the moment. He narrowly avoided a monster strike, fully aware that once his stamina was gone, his life would end. At this point, the hidden skill Mirror World was his sole chance to survive. Without fully understanding how it worked, he evaded another attack and tried to activate the skill by touching the monster, but it failed because the requirements were not satisfied. He wondered whether his level was too low or if the skill required an actual mirror to function. When he attempted to use Mirror World on the monster again, the system rejected it once more due to insufficient level. From this, he guessed that a reflective surface was necessary for activation. Since the level problem could not be fixed immediately, he chose to test the skill on something else. He tried using it on the monster's weapon, only for the attempt to fail again because of his low level. He then targeted the monster's torn loincloth, but the result was the same. The boy with glasses shouted in desperation, telling Yun-Che to stop wasting time on useless abilities because he was reaching his limit. Suddenly, a violent surge of energy crashed down from the sky, and a creature identified as a level 10 malformed overlord emerged. The boy with glasses felt all hope vanish, knowing they were doomed. A monster of that rank required at least level 10 to defeat. Moments later, more pillars of energy descended from above, and his eyes filled with terror as his legs gave out beneath him. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of savage monsters surrounded them, sealing their fate. As Yun-Che struggled with his ability, the monsters started rushing straight at them without hesitation. He even tried using his skill on nearby stones, only to fail again, making him suspect the level difference was simply too great. Then he turned to Xiao Xi's crude defensive barrier, the name of the boy with glasses, and attempted to activate Mirror World on it. But the system immediately rejected the attempt, explaining that skills belonging to others could not be reversed. The moment Yun-Che understood this rule, a grin slowly appeared on his face, because it meant one important thing. He could reverse his own abilities. The instant he targeted himself, the system confirmed that Mirror World had successfully inverted his Entangling Vine skill. Without wasting time, Yun-Che activated the new skill, Chaotic Thorns, and countless sharp thorns burst violently from the ground. Just as one monster lunged forward, another monster glowing with a red aura suddenly slammed into it, blocking the attack and saving Xiao Xi. Xiao Xi froze in confusion, unable to understand what was happening. Yun-Che, however, quickly grasped the truth. The skill's effect had been completely flipped. Instead of restraining enemies, it now caused mental disruption. Normally, Entangling Vines could barely trap a single target with a low chance of success, but its reverse form unleashed thorns that struck enemies with a chance to inflict confusion. Under this effect, the monsters began turning on one another, attacking anything nearby without reason. Watching the chaos unfold, Yun-Che smiled, realizing that a once worthless ability had transformed into something terrifying. The thought of reversing his remaining skills filled him with anticipation. Mirror World fully deserved its title as an SSS-ranked hidden skill, as it did not merely flip effects but strengthened them entirely. Had he used the original version of the skill, the chances of success would have been laughably low. Under normal conditions, the binding effect would barely hold for a single second, nowhere near the strength it now displayed. Yun-Che pulled a sword embedded in the dirt and felt a surge of excitement as he wondered how far this reversal could go with his other abilities. His gaze soon landed on a skill called Empowered Strike. It required 20 mana, lasted half a minute, and increased the attack power of one target by 5%, ending once that target spent mana. When Yun-Che inverted this skill, it became Trick Blade. The cost doubled to 40 mana, the duration stretched to 60 seconds, and every use of mana now granted a 10% increase in attack power. The moment he activated Trick Blade, his sword erupted with a fierce aura. Yun-Che quickly understood that each time he used a skill, his attack strength would rise by another 10%. With Trick Blade active and a full minute remaining, simply casting abilities would keep stacking his power. The possibilities were frightening. Soon after, Yun-Che felt a surge of strength as he reached level 6. Glancing around, he noticed many monsters had already killed each other in their madness. and he realized they provided a generous amount of experience when they died. When a monster attempted to strike him from behind, Yunche sensed it in time and raised his blade to block. His eyes flicked to his status, showing 480 health points and 120 mana. He then realized that leveling up instantly restored his mana supply. Seeing that the monsters were still attacking each other, Yunche decided it was the perfect chance to test the limits of Trickblade. Without hesitation, he activated Chaotic Thorns, draining mana, as the skill took effect. The moment Chaotic Thorns was cast, Trickblade activated again, draining his mana at high speed while stacking another 10% increase in attack power with every skill use. Yunche was left with only 12 mana, yet his attack had risen by a massive 120%, with 44 seconds still remaining on Trickblade's timer. His eyes shone brightly as he locked onto a monster charging straight at him. He quickly understood that this ability shattered all common limits, letting him reach more than double his normal strength with ease. When the creature swung, Yunche knocked the strike aside, slipped behind it, and carved deep wounds across its back and stomach. Xiao Xi stood frozen in disbelief. He could hardly believe the person moving so sharply was the same Yunche he knew. How could a level 5 chanter fight like this? And since when did chanters wield such terrifying power? Yunche pressed forward, cutting down monsters one after another. With level 6 attributes, 120 mana, and natural mana recovery, he realized he could theoretically push his attack to 2.3 times its base value. In a blink, he brought down a level 11 monster and smiled to himself. Still, he knew that his current strength was just barely enough to deal with elites of that level. Suddenly, a massive hand burst out of the earth. Yunche stared as a level 21 monster, the Battle Fiend Chimera, rose from the ground with a thunderous roar. It spun once and wiped out the surrounding lesser monsters in a single strike. Terror flooded Xiao Xi's face. Yunche, on the other hand, felt a flicker of surprise at encountering a hidden level 21 boss in such a dungeon. As the beast charged at them, Yunche attempted to cast Chaotic Thorns, but the skill failed, revealing the monster's immunity to chaos. Just as the creature was about to strike, Xiao Xi stepped forward and raised his shield. Yunche was caught off guard, and moments later, a familiar presence entered his sight. A blonde-haired boy suddenly shouted at him, calling him a fool and reminding him that he had warned him not to rush in recklessly, causing Yunche's eyes to widen in surprise. The boss struck with overwhelming force, smashing through the shield Xiao Xi had summoned and hurling his body violently into the ground. Yunche sprinted to his side, stretched out his hand, and began activating his abilities. He cast Basic Heal on Xiao Xi, restoring only 1 point of health, which drained his mana down to 54 and instantly triggered Trickblade, adding another 10% to his attack power. He cast Basic Heal again, this time landing a critical heal that restored 5 HP, but his mana dropped to a single point. Yunche couldn't help but think how miserable a chanter's healing really was, and quickly asked Xiao Xi if he had any healing potions, to which Xiao Xi replied that he had one emergency potion, prompting Yunche to tell him to drink it immediately. With that, Trickblade still had 85 seconds remaining. Meanwhile, the boss began wiping out the remaining monsters with ease. Yunche knew he stood no chance against it yet, but the smaller enemies were nearly gone, and a plan was already forming in his mind. Raising his blade, he told Xiao Xi to hold on for 1 minute because he was about to clear the rest, leaving Xiao Xi stunned. Yunche surged forward like lightning, cutting down monsters in rapid succession until Trickblade's timer finally ran out. He leveled up, restoring his health and mana to a massive 8,020, and immediately began reactivating Trickblade by repeatedly casting Chaotic Thorns. Every mana-consuming cast triggered Trickblade again, stacking another 10% increase to his attack each time. Yunche knew that to challenge the boss, he needed at least a 400% attack boost. He continued slaughtering monsters, leveling up once more and restoring his mana to 110. He cast Chaotic Thorns again, gaining another 10% boost as his mana dropped to 101, then repeated it, stacking yet another increase while his mana fell to 92. At that moment, Yunche calculated that he would need to cast Chaotic Thorns 40 times within 50 seconds, which meant only one thing. He had to reach level 10. Xiao Xi stood frozen, completely unable to trust what he was witnessing as Yunche broke through level after level right before his eyes. The boss gathered strength to strike, but Yunche suddenly shone with a blinding light, revealing that he had reached level 12. His Trickblade now carried a massive 510% attack increase with 9 seconds still left, more than enough to confront the monster head-on. Yunche vanished like a flash of lightning, severed one of its arms, reappeared behind it, and unleashed a relentless storm of slashes that made the creature scream in agony. Before it could even respond, Yunche carved its body apart completely. In less than a heartbeat, a level 21 boss with over 10,000 health was erased. After its death, Yunche gained 3 more levels, reaching level 15. Xiao Xi felt dizzy, unsure if he was dreaming, questioning whether a mere level 5 chanter had just cleared an entire new dungeon alone. With the dungeon lord defeated, the dungeon itself collapsed and was officially cleared. Xiao Xi walked over cautiously and asked if Yunche was truly himself. Items dropped across the ground, and the system urged Yunche to collect the rewards. Still stunned, Xiao Xi asked how Yunche had suddenly become so powerful. As memories of his past surfaced, Yunche looked at Xiao Xi and asked what his connection was to Xiao Binbin. Xiao Xi was shocked, unable to understand how Yunche knew his great-grandfather's nickname. Yunche, in turn, was surprised to learn that Xiao Xi was actually Xiao Binbin's great-grandson, and memories of the old man resurfaced, filling his eyes with sorrow as he recalled how everyone he once knew had been slaughtered by Luo Wei. Before Yunche could ask anything further, Xiao Xi looked away and said there was no need to talk about him right now, adding that if Yunche didn't want to explain his strength, he didn't have to, and there was no reason to embarrass him. Yunche felt confused, unsure why the conversation had suddenly turned this way. Xiao Xi then added that although he didn't understand a reason, Yunche had clearly been hiding his real strength all along, and suggested they head back to school since the next day involved a visit to the Modern History Memorial Hall, and skipping class would draw unwanted attention. Hearing this, Yunche clenched his fist tightly, a wave of fury rising in his chest. Yunche chose to follow his advice, yet he understood clearly that he could not expose the truth about himself for now, because if Xiao Xi dug too deeply, doubt would surely arise. His thoughts drifted to the Modern History Memorial Hall, since it should contain records of everything that happened after his death. The following day, they rode the subway toward school, surrounded by excited students chatting nonstop. The world had changed beyond recognition, and after being gone for so many years, Yunche felt as if he had stepped into a completely different era. He was stunned to discover that dungeon materials were now used to power vehicles, and countless strange inventions filled the city, many of which he had never seen before. Still, some of these things felt familiar, as he had encountered similar items inside dungeons long ago. He opened his system inventory and wondered whether only monster drops could be brought out of a dungeon. He equipped the Chimera Bone Ring, a level 14 accessory crafted from the rib of the Flesh and Bone Dungeon Lord, the Battlefield Chimera, which allowed the user to attach a chimera limb to their body. Yunche then took out the robust physique skill book. From this, he realized that equipment and skill books stored in the inventory could be taken outside dungeons and even traded in the real world. The resilient physique skill activated successfully, becoming a permanent passive that reduced incoming physical damage. Anything that could not be stored in the inventory after defeating a dungeon lord must have vanished along with the dungeon itself. A puzzled light flashed in Yunche's eyes, as he had no idea what the world had become after his death. Soon after, they arrived at the Modern History Memorial Hall, and the first thing that greeted him was a towering statue of Luo Wei, honored as the supreme ruler of the empire and the emperor who had supposedly ended the dungeon calamities. As the teacher began guiding the students through the hall, he explained that many people knew this location had once been the battlefield of a famous rebellion more than 50 years ago. The teacher went on to say that in those years the world was overwhelmed by dungeons, and people lived under constant threat, especially after the appearance of the most horrifying triple S rank dungeon, which plunged everyone in endless fear. He explained that King Luo Wei personally led the elite forces in a battle, and although the losses were enormous, he eventually managed to defeat that dreadful dungeon. However, at the very moment of victory, a carefully prepared uprising broke out. According to recorded history, the mastermind behind this rebellion was Yunche. He was once the king's most trusted figure, yet later became known as a heartless traitor who turned against the throne. Hearing this version of events, Yunche felt rage boiling inside him, unable to accept how the truth had been twisted. It was they who cleared the triple S rank dungeon, and it was they who were betrayed and ambushed. The teacher clenched his fist tightly, saying it was impossible to imagine the agony of being stabbed in the back at such a time, but that their king endured the pain and continued to fight with sheer determination. In the end, with assistance from the great hero Ding Kuan, the rebellion was crushed. At the mention of that name, Yunche's eyes flickered with interest as he wondered whether such a person truly existed. Just then, the boys who had tortured Yunche at the lake appeared nearby, looking confused as they realized they were still alive. They whispered among themselves, questioning how this could be possible when Yunche and Xiao Xi had clearly been pulled into a newly formed dungeon. One of them muttered that the dungeon had already been cleared, reasoning that only a powerful expert could have done so in such a short time. In his view, they had been incredibly fortunate to encounter that expert, while Yunche quietly fixed his gaze on them. Recognizing them as the scum who had abused the original owner of his body, he watched as others gathered around Ding Su, curious about what he was saying. With faces full of disbelief, they questioned whether he had truly run into a new dungeon and, even more astonishingly, survived it. Ding Su casually wrapped an arm around Xiao Xi's shoulder and remarked that he was lucky to have escaped with his life. He leaned closer and spoke in a low voice, saying that they had nearly dragged Ding Su and his group into that dungeon that day and demanded to know how Xiao Xi intended to repay that debt. Xiao Xi panicked and immediately claimed that everything was Ding Zu's doing. He threatened to report Ding Su, accusing him of almost getting both himself and Yunche killed. Ding Su suddenly grabbed Xiao Xi by the head, asking what he was even thinking and realizing that he clearly had no understanding of the situation. He then pointed toward the statue ahead and told Xiao Xi to look carefully at how his ancestor was being stepped on by the hero. Ding Su declared that the man shown there was the traitor Qiao En, and that Xiao Xi was his descendant. Finally, Ding Su sneered and asked if Xiao Xi truly believed anyone would stand on his side. His voice rose as he shouted that Xiao Xi could insult him all he wanted, but he would never allow anyone to disrespect his ancestor, leaving Xiao Xi completely stunned. More people began to gather, already aware that Ding Zu's grandfather was the legendary hero Ding Kun. When Yunche heard this, his eyes flashed with uncontrollable fury. The surrounding students slowly realized that the person beside them was Xiao Xi, the descendant of Qiao. And to them, a traitor's descendant daring to speak against a hero felt like the world had turned upside down. They remembered the stories of how Qiao En had massacred countless people, and how far worse it could have been without the hero's intervention. Ding Su continued speaking, stating that he didn't care what Xiao Xi said behind his back, but he would not tolerate his ancestor being insulted face to face. At that moment, the teacher stepped in, placed a hand on Xiao Xi's shoulder, and asked him to apologize. He said that as a teacher, he had always been impartial, reminded him that the hero had shown mercy to his family long ago, and concluded that even if Xiao Xi felt no gratitude, he had no right to slander the hero. After finishing his words, the teacher walked away, leaving the situation behind. Ding Su casually rested a hand on Xiao Xi's head and said that even if he beat him in public, the crowd would only applaud because no one would ever step in to help a mad dog being punished, especially a dog as hated as Xiao Xi. He then yanked Xiao Xi by the hair and sneered, asking whether he truly believed that someone descended from a hero could ever be in the wrong. Just as Ding Su lifted his hand to strike, a sudden kick slammed into his face and sent him crashing to the ground. Xiao Xi stared in disbelief, his eyes wide open. Standing there was Yunche, his gaze burning with fury. Yunche coldly asked whether the hero's family had been too busy to teach their children basic manners. The surrounding students immediately started recording, whispering in shock as they questioned whether that person was really Yunche. They muttered that he looked completely different and couldn't believe he had actually dared to hit Ding Su. In their eyes, Yunche had always been a level 5 nobody, the weakest in the class, so they couldn't understand what had happened to give him such courage. Orphaned, withdrawn, and friendless, they assumed he had simply snapped. Ding Su wiped the blood from his cheek and mocked Yunche, saying he was nothing more than a punching bag who should be thankful Ding Su wasn't seriously targeting him. He couldn't accept that Yunche had attacked him while his guard was down. Enraged, Ding Su and his friends rushed forward together. Yunche moved like a flash of lightning, weaving through their attacks and striking them down before they could even react. Ding Su collapsed to his knees, coughing up blood as he hit the floor. Murmurs spread through the crowd as students stared in disbelief. Ding Su himself was stunned, unable to comprehend Yunche's speed. Others were confused, wondering how Ding Su had been defeated so easily again and whether he had always been this weak. In that moment, Ding Zu's anger erupted completely. Ding Su could not accept that a worthless level 5 support had suddenly surpassed him in strength. Enraged, he immediately activated the skill Hell, boosting his attack by 25%, and equipped his Fireforge hammer, which added 314 points of attack. Convinced that Yunche had only won by chance, he charged forward without hesitation. Yunche reacted instantly, slipped into the opening, and smashed a punch into Ding Zu's jaw while activating Blade of Trickery, which raises attack power by 80%. Ding Zu's mind went blank in shock before Yunche followed up with a kick that slammed him hard into the floor. guards rushed in, and seeing Yun Che standing over Ding Su, one of them shouted, asking if there was a healer present. The students were completely stunned by Yun Chi's speed, unable to reconcile it with the memory of him being only level 5. Even the blonde girl and her companion stared in disbelief. The guards sternly announced that fighting was forbidden inside the memorial hall due to the risk of damage and demanded to know why the teacher had failed to control his students. The teacher stepped forward, anger written across his face. In his eyes, Yun Che had not only disrespected a hero, but had also dared to attack the hero's descendant, making his behavior utterly shameless. He drew his sword, and Yun Chi's gaze locked onto him. Yun Che activated his ring, and when the teacher swung, the blade shattered on impact, sending fragments flying and shocking everyone present. Yun Che calmly said that they should put aside the question of shamelessness for the moment, then pointed out that despite claiming to be fair, the teacher had clearly only listened to Ding Zu's version of events. He asked bluntly whether the teacher was simply trying to win favor with Ding Zu's family. The teacher snapped at him to stop spouting nonsense, but his eyes were drawn to Yun Chi's ring, wondering what kind of equipment it was, since even without using his full strength, his attack had been completely blocked. A heavy presence suddenly spread from Yun Chi's body as he calmly explained that his words were only a passing remark and added that he didn't truly believe the teacher was that kind of person. The students were stunned, unable to accept that Yun Che had actually stopped the teacher's strike. The teacher stated that he would carefully look into the cause of the incident, though inside he questioned where Yun Che had acquired such equipment and whether he had powerful support behind him. The ring on Yun Chi's finger was the chimera bone ring, and its durability had already dropped by 37%. Even though it was epic grade gear, it had come from a level 21 lord, so clashing with a level 35 teacher had clearly pushed it to its limit. Yun Che requested that both he and Xiao Xi be expelled from the hall as punishment. Xiao Xi rose to his feet and followed Yun Che, his expression filled with confusion. The surrounding students remained in disbelief, wondering how a student could possibly block a teacher's attack. The teacher ordered someone to cast a healing spell on Ding Su, and while that was handled, Yun Che and Xiao Xi left the memorial hall together. Yun Che felt a deep sadness, realizing that in the end, no one had survived and that Bin had been killed long ago by the so-called hero. His eyes shifted toward Xiao Xi, and he thought that if he asked him something now, the boy would probably answer honestly. Clearing his throat, Yun Che said his understanding of history was lacking and asked Xiao Xi to explain the specific accomplishments of the hero Ding Kun. Nervous, Xiao Xi replied that while he wasn't sure if he remembered everything correctly, it was said that Ding Kun had discovered the great villain Yun Chi's plot in advance. He explained that the hero had set up an ambush near the Triple S rank dungeon to provide reinforcements, which was how the rebellion had been completely resolved. Yun Che felt a flicker of surprise as memories of his past life and the ambush resurfaced in his mind. Xiao Xi continued, saying that Ding Kun had dreamed of ending the dungeon disaster since childhood and had trained relentlessly toward that goal. After earning the king's favor, he fought across the land for many years, saving countless regions from disasters, including the legendary Great Cataclysm of Winterfell City. Yun Che lowered his gaze to the ground, lost in thought as the image of his former self standing atop a sea of bodies surfaced in his mind, and with a heavy expression, he asked about the sword held in the hero's statue. Xiao Xi explained that it was called the Flowing Cloud Sword and said that, according to legend, it was the very blade used by the hero to execute the traitor Yun Che, a top-tier weapon of immense value. Hearing this, Yun Chi's eyes burned with fury, realizing that not only had his achievements and honor been stolen, but even his sword had been taken as well, and in that moment he resolved that Ding Kun would be the first to die. Outside the Ding family estate, numerous high-level warriors patrolled the area, and suddenly one of them narrowed his glowing eyes as he sensed movement. In the distance, he spotted Yun Che and Xiao Xi slipping into a narrow alley, but after a brief glance, he dismissed them as mere passers-by and paid no further attention. Yun Che, however, noticed the man's sharp awareness and wondered if he was a wanderer with a scouting-type skill. Xiao Xi quietly urged Yun Che to leave, pointing out that the number of guards was too great and that even if they managed to sneak inside, they would be finished the moment Ding Su returned. Although Yun Che wanted nothing more than to storm in and kill Ding Kun himself, he understood that it was unrealistic. Xiao Xi explained that Ding Kun now spent nearly all his time inside a high-level dungeon, and unlike in the past, dungeons could no longer be entered or exited freely, as powerful ones were strictly guarded by the military and required special permits to access. Still, Yun Che was certain that Ding Kun's family must possess such a pass somewhere within their home. He questioned whether it was truly necessary for the family to maintain so many guards, considering they were only one of many branches descended from Ding Kuan. Xiao Xi replied that regardless, they were still the bloodline of a hero and even possessed a dungeon within their own estate. Yunche was stunned to learn that they had a private dungeon, and Xiao Xi added that while low-level dungeons had long been traded privately, such things were completely unattainable for those without power or influence. With guards constantly protecting him, Ding Su could enter the dungeon whenever he wished, hunting monsters and leveling up at will. Unlike them, ordinary students only got to enter dungeons during school practicals, where they even had to compete for monsters to fight. Yunche realized how much times had changed and wondered if this meant the richer and more powerful you were, the higher your level would become. Xiao Xi agreed, explaining that a regular student usually finished school around level 15 to 20. Since many lost dungeon access after that, they stayed stuck at those levels. If someone worked in a dungeon-related job, like a miner or ranger in a national dungeon, they might reach close to level 30 by middle age. Guards like those at Ding Zu's estate had the advantage of their family's dungeon, keeping them around level 30. To get higher than that, one had to join the army or official groups like a guild or military academy, often through school exams. Only then could they enter tougher dungeons and grow stronger. Yunche knew that having such a pass was key if he wanted to get stronger. Xiao Xi urged him to just leave, saying the level gap was too big and no matter how skilled he was, he wouldn't stand a chance against the guards. Yunche understood he wasn't strong enough yet to take down that hero, let alone the supreme King Luo Wei, who had layers of protection. Still, Yunche knew scouting skills learned around level 30 were usually small-scale, like eagle-eye vision, better hearing, or summoning craft spirits. Not enough to watch over the whole mansion all day. Plus, this wasn't a life-or-death dungeon, and most guards were pretty relaxed. Yunche figured that was enough for him to sneak in. Xiao Xi panicked, but Yunche leapt onto the wall, thinking that compared to the nearly perfect scouting systems in the high-level dungeons had known before, this place was a cakewalk. Xiao Xi warned that even if they managed to sneak into a private dungeon like this, they could be killed without anyone punishing the killers. Yunche grabbed Xiao Xi's shirt and asked if he really wanted to change his fate. Xiao Xi admitted he did, but only planned to after joining a guild. Yunche asked if he truly believed the guild could turn his life around. Xiao Xi, the great-grandson of the traitor Xiao En, looked downcast. Yunche pulled him up onto the wall and said that destiny only changes through action now, not by hoping for some uncertain future. He wasn't about to miss this dungeon right in front of them. He told Xiao Xi to decide if he wanted to come along. Xiao Xi started sweating as Yunche wondered if a descendant would follow his ancestors' path. Finally, Xiao Xi stood up because he couldn't bear to watch Yunche die alone. Yunche told him to stay quiet, explaining there were no summoning-type scouting skills here. So if they stayed silent, avoided being seen, and acted at the right moment, they could get inside easily. Grabbing Xiao Xi, Yunche led the way, and they slipped into the Ding family estate. Xiao Xi's eyes fixed on the dungeon hidden underground. Inside, they spotted two monsters, one level 6, the other level 8. Yunche noticed these monsters were a bit stronger than the last dungeons, but fewer in number, probably because Ding Zu's family kept clearing them out. Yunche pointed out there were only two small enemies and told Xiao Xi to try fighting them. Xiao Xi was scared and refused, saying he couldn't beat them. But Yunche pushed him to fight. As the monsters attacked, Xiao Xi raised a shield to block. Still, he couldn't believe Yunche trusted him to win. Nervous and regretting coming, Xiao Xi braced himself for battle. Xiao Xi was ready to quit and just go home, but Yunche encouraged him to try fighting back. Xiao Xi nervously asked how he was supposed to find the right moment. Yunche reassured him, saying he was watching closely and nothing bad would happen. Trusting Yunche, Xiao Xi raised a shield and struck the enemy. Then, when another monster tried to sneak up from behind, Xiao Xi quickly dodged, just like Yunche expected. It turned out Xiao Xi had good talent. The problem was he was always scared and panicked, so he only dared to defend. Still, his instincts about positioning were spot on, so even though he looked trapped, he didn't lose much health. Xiao Xi attacked again, but his shield broke into pieces. Yunche struck fast like lightning, finishing off the monsters. Xiao Xi was surprised when he leveled up to 7. Yunche explained that experience points were shared based on how much damage you did. So if Xiao Xi hadn't distracted the monsters, he wouldn't have earned much since Yunche dealt the killing blows. Yunche held the resentful bone blade, a sword made from a leg bone filled with hatred, which boosted his attack by 62 and his magic power by 11. He noticed Xiao Xi move quickly and asked how he spread out his attribute points. Xiao Xi said he put points evenly everywhere except spirit. Yunche remembered shield users usually didn't invest in agility. Xiao Xi admitted that if he didn't, No one wanted to team up with him because slow shield bearers got left behind while others grabbed all the monsters. Yunche sighed and told him to think long-term. After level 60, to advance classes, you need to meet certain attribute requirements. Yunche explained about the Bastion Fortress class, saying it needed 60 stamina and 90 defense points, so you couldn't just put points anywhere. Xiao Xi said most people only ever reach around level 40 in their life, and thought reaching level 60, which was S rank, was impossible. Yunche smiled and placed a hand on Xiao Xi's shoulder, telling him he should start aiming for S rank and even beyond from now on. He also said he needed to plan how to advance his own class. Yunche thought about how his support class only came back to life because of the hidden skill, Mirror World, and that had probably switched to a different class later. Then, he was shocked to discover something amazing. Mirror World could actually level up. In the Ding family's private dungeon, Yunche fought monsters quickly. His Trick Blade skill boosted his attacks, but it ended just as he struck a level 17 zombie greed demon. The monster survived, showing Trick Blade's power, but also its weakness in long battles. Yunche's mana and stamina were almost gone. When a monster finally died, it proved his body couldn't handle long fights. The battle gave him great rewards. He leveled up twice, hitting level 17, and his health, mana, and attributes grew fast. He also got 2 shadow creature souls from elite zombies, which gave his SSS rank Mirror World skill 2,000 experience points, meaning it could level up now. After the fight, Yunche gathered the loot, happy with his level gains and the Mirror World experience. Suddenly, sensing something was wrong, he climbed higher and saw Ding family guards patrolling more often than before. Below them, Xiao Xi, now level 8 and wearing better gear, nervously suggested they call it quits. He noticed there were fewer monsters around, and the guards seemed more alert, making things too dangerous. He wondered if they had been spotted. Yunche agreed quietly. Fighting now would be nearly impossible. They'd have to keep an eye on every guard and use Trick Blade carefully. With his current strength and the increased security, the risk was just too great. Yunche glanced at a new skill book called Brick Spell, which could create mana bricks. When reversed by Mirror World, it turned into Void Technique, allowing small things to become intangible. He realized not all reverse skills were about fighting. Some had sneaky, non-combat uses. Checking his Mirror World skill, he saw it needed about 30% more experience to level up. Standing on the cliff, Yunche thought about the incredible power his reverse skills gave him. Even at its basic level, it made him feel stronger and more confident. With eyes glowing, he started planning. This dungeon gave unique Mirror World experience for monsters, and he figured killing the boss could push the skill to level 2. A prize too good to pass up, even with the guards' risk. They moved stealthily through the cave, hiding behind rocks as the guards used detection skills more often, making their situation dangerous. Yunche peeked ahead and spotted their target, a huge shadowy figure sitting on a throne, locked in thick glowing purple chains at the top of some stairs, heavily guarded. This was the dungeon's boss. Xiao Xi was shocked to see the boss so tightly controlled. Yunche wasn't surprised. He knew their school's boss was also guarded like this, meaning it was normal for powerful monsters. He scanned the area and noticed the guards looked relaxed on the stairs. His eyes locked on the glowing chains binding the boss, strong restraints that meant a direct attack would be suicide, impossible to win and sure to draw every guard's attention. Yunche knew he couldn't take down the boss with so many guards around, but he spotted a chance when one guard wandered off alone. He decided to quietly eliminate them one by one. Covering his face, Yunche activated Trick Blade for a 150% attack boost and launched a surprise attack. The plan worked perfectly. The guard was quickly disabled and collapsed as Xiao Xi looked on. Standing over the fallen guard, Yunche's presence turned dark as he demanded information. The guard, trembling, begged for mercy and promised to spill everything, admitting the Ding family didn't pay him enough to die for them. Yunche listened carefully, seeing this as the perfect moment to ask about his main goal, sneaking into the compound. When Yunche brought up the Hero Dungeon Pass, the guard froze in shock. He hurriedly said the old master had plenty in his study, and they weren't rare at all. Mistakenly, the guard assumed Yunche was obsessed with the hero grandpa. Scared by Yunche's silence, the guard swore he was telling the truth, saying he often saw the old master carrying the passes. He warned that the passes were just temporary samples, and without someone on the inside, they'd be caught for sure. Yunche didn't mind this. Grabbing the guard's collar firmly, he told him not to worry. With cold eyes, he ordered the guard to empty his inventory, showing he planned to rob him and maybe even take his identity. Back inside the Ding family compound, Yunche kept pressing the guard while holding him by the shirt. He felt let down when the guard only had one mediocre skill book. The frightened guard insisted that was all he had, explaining that the Ding family stored all valuable dungeon drops deep inside their inner residence, leaving the outer guards only scraps. Yunche checked the skill book, Sunlight Baptism, a passive skill that gave temporary defense after healing. Using Mirror World, he reversed it into Moonlight Blessing, a powerful attack skill that gave a temporary damage boost after healing. He realized the skill, like the dungeon passes, was kept inside the Ding family's inner mansion. The guard pointed toward the Grand Estate and said that outer guards like him couldn't enter without a special invitation. He added the security was extremely tight. Only Ding Su had free access. Everyone inside was over level 30 with top-tier gear, making the outer guards almost useless. Yunche grabbed the guard closer and asked if the pass was definitely in that mansion. The terrified guard nodded and warned that the powerful family leader, level 42, was also inside, a foe far beyond Yunche's strength. He went on to explain the family's hierarchy. The current and second heads were level 42, the third was level 52, and the old master was level 57. The guard warned that if the two strongest family members returned, it would be impossible to succeed. After getting all this, Yunche knocked the guard out cold. He had Xiao Xi put on the guard armor as a disguise and wait for a signal. Since the powerful family leader was safe inside, Yunche planned to draw him out instead of facing him directly. Back in the dungeon, Yunche studied the boss. He realized the Ding family used powerful chains to keep the boss alive and trapped, turning it into a permanent farming spot. Yunche saw a big weakness in the system. The chains were the only security, and they were easy to guard, but also easy to break if you knew how. The guards felt safe, thinking no one could unlock the chains. They didn't know Yunche had experience from his past life and could unlock them easily. Quietly, he crept up to a guard and quickly opened the lock. The chains fell, and the furious boss burst free, roaring wildly. The guards panicked as the massive monster rampaged through the area. This chaos was exactly what Yunche needed to bait the family leader out of the mansion. His plan worked perfectly. Alarms blared as the level 42 family head rushed out from the now unguarded inner residence, ordering reinforcements to the dungeon. While he and his guards hurried to stop the chaos, Yunche used the distraction to snatch the powerful level 60 combat chains binding the boss. Clutching the powerful high-level gear, Yunche felt his plan had worked perfectly. With the family head and elite guards distracted, he and Xiao Xi had a clear path into the inner mansion. Meanwhile, new arrivals pulled up at the Ding family's main gate. Servants hurried to welcome the returning second master, Ding Hao, level 42, along with his son Ding Su, who arrived in a flashy car. Ding Hao shrugged off Ding Zu's recent defeat to Yunche as no big deal, but Ding Su snapped back that he wasn't there to greet his father. Then Ding Hao opened the car door for Miss Yun Sha, and two young women stepped out, one with flowing blonde hair and her dark-haired companion. Upstairs, the mustached family head who had returned from the dungeon chaos stood waiting with a smile. But suddenly his grin faded into confusion, then anger. He shoved a servant aside roughly, yelling at him to move, and the servant collapsed onto the ground. The furious family head stormed toward Ding Hao, Ding Su, and their guests, clearly upset. Hidden in the woods, Xiao Xi, disguised as a guard, watched the tense scene unfold. Suddenly, Yunche appeared behind him, startling the boy. Xiao Xi admitted he was worried, saying that with the Ding family back, sneaking in now was risky. Yunche asked why he looked so tense, and a surprised Xiao Xi wondered how Yunche had arrived so quickly. Yunche explained that the creature he released was a dungeon lord. Even a level 31 dungeon lord was tough to catch alive, meaning the Ding family's strongest fighters would be busy for a long time. He said they weren't likely to beat the boss soon, making this the perfect distraction. After settling this, Yunche asked Xiao Xi what he had noticed. Xiao Xi looked toward the house with sadness and explained that the servant the family had kicked was his youngest uncle, Xiao Li, who was level 17. Yunche listened quietly as Xiao Xi shared a painful memory. When the original Yunche rebelled, his whole family had already been wiped out. Xiao Xi added that, in a way, this spared them from the shame and suffering that came after, a fate common for children of traitors like themselves. Hearing about the suffering Yunche's old friend's family had endured because of lies about their past, Yunche's face grew serious and determined. As they hid in the trees, Xiao Xi shared more of his family's painful history. He said that after being labeled traitors, the Qiao family faced endless cruelty from the empire. Their homes were torn down and their lives shattered. It got even worse under secret orders from the so-called hero Ding Kuan, who made sure the surviving Qiaos were constantly bullied and hurt, left beaten and broken. The few remaining Qiao family members were forced to serve the very Ding family who destroyed them. Now, they lived in poverty always watching their masters carefully, begging for scraps. Xiao Xi admitted with shame that sometimes they were shown off as proof of the Ding family's mercy for forgiving traitor children. He said his father's generation tried to fight back and stand up against the unfair treatment, but their efforts failed badly. The pressure broke his father's mind, and his uncle Xiao Li became completely obedient, like a loyal dog to the Ding family. Burdened by this hopeless past, Xiao Xi started doubting if it was right to follow Yun Che into such danger. But before he could say more, Yun Che looked at him firmly and said they had to reach the inner mansion. Panicked, Xiao Xi tried to stop him, reminding him that Ding Ze's father, a fully geared level 42 fighter, was inside and warned that Yun Che would surely die if caught. Yun Che wasn't afraid. He explained that in this world, where powerful people control who can access dungeons and strength, you can't change your fate without taking risks. He stared at Xiao Xi and said some things never happen if you only wait and worry. Finally, Yun Che gave Xiao Xi a clear choice to make. Yun Che told Xiao Xi that he could help change his future, but Xiao Xi had to be the one to take the first step. Yun Che made it clear that he planned to fight back, but he wouldn't force Xiao Xi to follow him. Even with Yun Che's strong determination, Xiao Xi was still scared and unsure. He argued that the Ding family was a powerful force controlling the world, and wondered how just the two of them could stand against such power. Yun Che looked away toward the distant inner mansion and started walking forward, telling the shocked Xiao Xi that his goal was much bigger than just one family. The real battle, he said, was against the whole empire. Meanwhile, inside the quiet mansion, Ding Hao relaxed on a couch, served by a maid. He wondered how the dungeon lord had broken free from its strong chains. Seeing him, the blonde girl politely asked if it was a bad time and offered to come back later because of the emergency. Ding Hao quickly brushed off her worries, saying his older brother, the family head, could handle it. He smiled, saying a simple dungeon problem was nothing compared to her visit. He added that when the powerful old master and his third brother heard Miss Yinsha was coming, they were already on their way back to meet her. He also said they had contacted Hero Grandpa, who was very excited to see her, making the problem easy to manage. From a hidden spot on a balcony, Yun Che overheard everything. His eyes sharpened when he heard Hero Grandpa, knowing they meant the famous hero Ding Kun. His mind raced as he connected this new information with what he had learned from the capture guard. To enter the hero's dungeon, you needed not just a pass, but also a companion. Yun Che glanced at the visitors and noticed how everyone treated Yun Cha with great respect, making him realize she must hold an important position. Then a sudden thought struck him. Her last name was Yun, just like his own. Was it merely a coincidence? He pushed the idea aside for now and focused on his main goal, getting that dungeon pass. As he stepped back, Yun Cha's friend stood quietly nearby, her expression unreadable. An air of mystery and significance surrounded her. With the Ding family's top fighters distracted, Yun Che slipped quietly into the mansion's inner chambers. He moved like a shadow through the ornate hallways, carefully avoiding two chatting maids, staying hidden in the dark. He navigated the lavish corridors, pressing deeper into the estate toward his target. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, the crisis was over. Ding Yi, the family head at level 42, stood before the now fallen dungeon lord, flanked by his guards. He suspected the monster had been deliberately unleashed, but was annoyed they couldn't find who was responsible. Such a risky move must have had a bigger purpose than just stealing the powerful chains. Determined to protect his home, he commanded his men to secure the inner residence first. His top priority was the important guest. He wouldn't let anything alarm the young lady. Inside the study, Yun Che began his search. He went to the desk the guard had mentioned, but was irritated to find empty drawers. Then he remembered his new non-combat skill, phasing, the reverse of brick spell, which let his hand pass through solid wood. Using it, he discovered a secret compartment inside the desk. Inside, he found a hidden drawer packed with books and journals. His eyes landed first on a worn diary. Setting the diary aside, Yun Che's eyes landed on the real treasure, a stash of high-quality, fancy skill books. One caught his attention, a powerful support skill called Slowing Aura that could reduce the speed of all enemies within a large area. He had discovered the Ding family's secret cache. Outside, the entrance to the inner residence was swarming with guards. Hidden in the nearby forest, Xiao Xi's heart raced with fear as more and more soldiers gathered. He worried desperately that they had been spotted and that Yun Che might be trapped. Panic surged as memories of his father's madness and his family's endless suffering flooded his mind. His first instinct was to flee, to save himself by slipping away unnoticed. Then, as a guard crept near his hiding spot, he froze, unsure what to do. But Yun Qi's earlier words echoed in his mind. He could change his fate, but only if he chose to act. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Xi let out a loud shout, drawing the guards' attention. He burst from the shadows, running full speed to lead the guards away from the mansion. He had made his choice. He would be the distraction to protect Yun Che. Inside the house, Yun Che watched Xiao Xi's brave move with pride. Seeing the guards diverted, he smashed a window and leapt out, feeling a surge of hope. His friend had finally faced his fears and decided to fight his destiny. To cover Xiao Xi's escape, Yun Che made an even bigger scene. He landed boldly among the guards, taunting them loudly, claiming he had stolen the chains and skill books, daring them to catch him. Furious, the guards abandoned their posts and gave chase. As Yun Che ran, he activated the slowing aura skill head just stolen. But thanks to the mirror world, the skill flipped into accelerating aura, boosting his speed and that of any allies nearby. Watching them flee, the family head Ding Yi noticed something unusual. Instead of running away from the mansion, Yun Che and Xiao Xi headed straight back toward the dungeon, confusing the guards who chased them. Ding Yi, noticing this, quickly ordered 2 squads to stop the chase and return to guard the dungeon lord. Xiao Xi, running beside Yun Che, was puzzled and asked why they were leading the enemies back into danger. Yun Che calmly explained his plan. With so many guards drawn out chasing them, the dungeon lord should now be easier to control. He knew a fierce battle must have weakened the boss, lowering its health to a critical point. Checking his ultimate skill, Mirror World, Yun Che saw it was nearly ready to level up. With glowing purple eyes, he realized now was the perfect moment to finish off the dungeon lord and boost his power. Inside the Grand Ding family sitting room, a calm silence fell. The blonde woman sipping tea politely told Ding Hao he could handle the noise outside. Confident, Ding Hao brushed it off as a minor problem, a thief, and assured her his brother, Ding Yi, was managing it. But things were far from calm. Deep in the dungeon, Ding Yi was furious, yelling at a guard for being too slow and ordering him to chase the rampaging dungeon lord immediately. When Yun Che sped past, Ding Yi sent his fastest rogues and archers to abandon the boss and capture the intruder at all costs. Despite their efforts, Yun Qi's speed was unmatched. He had invested half of his attribute points into agility, leaving them far behind. With his reverse speed skills boosting him, Yun Che moved so fast that only elite level 30 rogues or archers could even try to keep pace. He dashed straight into the main chamber, where the skeletal overlord lay surrounded by guards. The huge beast was badly injured and barely standing as the guards scrambled to cast a protective sealing spell. Yun Che smiled, knowing his plan had worked exactly as he hoped. The boss was at its weakest point. Gathering a surge of purple energy, he readied himself to strike a final, crushing blow. Just as Yun Che got close, the guards around the overlord spotted him and yelled out a warning, rushing to block his way. But before they could form a solid defense, Yun Che unleashed chaotic thorns. Dark purple vines shot up violently from the ground, lashing wildly at the guards. They froze in shock, having never seen such a strange skill. The thorns aimed to cause a confusing effect. Normally humans could resist these status effects, but Yun Qi's skill was unnaturally strong, and several guards fell under its spell. Chaos erupted. Some of the affected guards became confused, even turning on each other. One mage accidentally hit a fellow guard with a powerful spell, throwing their ranks into disarray. The others stood dumbfounded, amazed that the skill worked so well. With the enemies fighting amongst themselves, Yun Che slipped easily through the mess. His path to the weakened dungeon lord was wide open. The guards panicked, yelling in frustration as their shields failed and their spells backfired on their own team. Yun Che noticed how poorly they worked together, realizing these guards were just a ragtag bunch with little real battle experience. He thought the long peace had made them weak and sloppy, leading to their defeat. A guard captain tried to rally the troops, insisting that if they could just trap the intruder, Yun Che would be finished. Just then, Ding Yi, the first patriarch, showed up, barking orders for his men to capture Yun Che. Clad in blazing armor, the level 42 warrior declared he would handle the intruder himself. With his fiery weapon blazing, he lunged forward, ready to deliver a crushing strike. Yun Che calmly watched him come, preparing for the clash. With a confident smirk, he chose to meet the attack head-on. He pulled out the level 60 combat chains he had stolen earlier. Though he wasn't strong enough to fully wield them yet, their tough durability was still a huge advantage. As Ding Yi's blazing blow slammed down, Yun Che raised the chains like a shield and blocked most of the force. Then, thinking quickly, Yun Che used the power of the fiery attack to blast himself backward like a cannonball, smashing through the magical barriers the guards were struggling to keep up around the boss. He landed right in front of the injured dungeon lord. With a cheeky grin, he thanked the furious patriarch for giving him a ride. Before the guards could react, Yunche shouted that he was taking the overlord's experience for himself. He struck with a powerful final blow, ending the boss life. The rewards were instant and huge. Yunche jumped 3 levels at once, reaching level 20 and gaining 9 new attribute points. Most importantly, the dungeon lord's massive experience maxed out his secret skill, Mirror World. A system message confirmed the upgrade. His skill had reached the powerful level 2. Furious that his kill was stolen, Ding Yi screamed and charged Yunche with his blazing axe. Behind him, the remaining guards surged forward to attack as well. Determined to catch the bold intruder standing calmly before the huge dungeon lord's fallen body, Ding Yi charged forward without hesitation. But Yunche showed no fear. Instead, he focused on the new strength his ultimate skill had gained after leveling up to 2. Just as Ding Yi's powerful attack was about to strike, it passed through a shimmering illusion of Yunche, who suddenly vanished without a trace. The guards froze, confused by his sudden disappearance. Yunche found himself somewhere completely different. The world around him had changed into a quiet, crystal-clear blue-green version of the dungeon. Activating a new power of his hidden skill, Mirror World, he entered this strange dimension and saw ghostly outlines of Ding Yi and the other guards moving unaware of him. A timer showed his mirror walk would last nearly 30 minutes. Excited, Yunche realized he could now step fully inside the mirror's world. Exploring this strange place, he noticed everything was a perfect flipped copy of the real dungeon, left and right reversed. At first, he thought the ghostly guard were just illusions, as his hand passed right through one. But when his fingers touched the crystal-like floor, he realized it was solid and real. This place wasn't just a trick, it was another world. While wandering, Yunche discovered something amazing, a solid crystal shard lying on the ground. A message popped up telling him he had found a mirror shard, an object he could carry from the mirror world back into reality. This was huge. With his mirror world skill now at level 2, he could bring real items from that other dimension into his own. Curious about what else had changed, he checked his system screen. The list of skills looked completely different, showing many powerful reversed abilities like invisibility and force fields. However, most were marked as inactive, which puzzled him. A quick message explained that these were reversed forms of base skills he hadn't learned yet. Yunche quickly grasped the true strength of his upgraded skill. The list he saw displayed reversed versions of all the abilities he could potentially learn. He realized that to unlock these powerful moves, he first had to find and master their regular forms in the real world. What had used at level 1 was just a simple glimpse of the skill's full power. As he scanned the exciting new possibilities, Yunche understood this changed everything. He could now plan his entire skill path, picking strong pairs and knowing exactly what reversed abilities he would gain later. Lost in thought about his future power, Yunche suddenly sensed something behind him. Turning around, he spotted a faint blue-green figure drifting in the crystal air. He guessed it might be a soul, similar to how he had been trapped before coming back to life. Curious, he asked if other souls lived here too. Suddenly, the calm spirit burst with green energy and transformed into a screaming, bone-like undead monster that charged at him. Surprised but ready, Yunche drew his glowing sword and met the attack. With a single swing, he easily shattered the creature, noting it wasn't very strong. Just as the creature fell, a new message appeared on his screen offering him an undead contract. It explained that by making a pact with a defeated soul, he could summon it into the real world to fight for him. The contract said the summoned soul's level would always match his own, and he could hold up to 20 such contracts. This unexpected chance made Yunche think deeply about the possibilities his new power held. He now knew that after defeating undead in the mirror world, he could form deals with their souls and bring them out as loyal warriors to aid him in reality. Holding the solid mirror shard head pulled from the other world, Yunche realized his upgraded mirror world skill was way more powerful than he thought. Level 2 didn't just let him bring back items like stones. Now he could summon an entire undead army from the mirror realm into reality. Staring out at the endless crystal landscape full of chances, he found the idea exciting. Meanwhile, back in the real world, chaos reigned. With the dungeon lord defeated, the secret dungeon disappeared, leaving the guards confused and stunned. No one could figure out where the intruder had vanished to. One captain shouted in panic, asking if the intruder had used a high-level rogue stealth skill. But an expert rogue shook his head, explaining their stealth wasn't perfect and couldn't make someone vanish so completely. Ding Yi's anger boiled over. He grabbed the rogue by the collar, demanding to know how the intruder escaped right under their noses. The furious patriarch Ding Yi lost control, grabbing a subordinate by the face and yelling that if they couldn't catch the culprit, they'd have to repay him for the dungeon's loss. Meanwhile, Yin Qi's time in the mirror world was running out. As the countdown ticked down, he wondered where Head reappear, back where he left or somewhere else. A moment later, he popped right back where Head vanished. Ding Yi immediately spotted him and roared for his men to attack. Calm and collected, Yin Che raised a hand, glowing with swirling green light, warning them not to rush. He said that after being hunted for so long, it was finally his turn to strike back. Then, he unleashed the new power Head gained from the mirror world. Suddenly, a wave of eerie skeletal warriors poured out, forming a terrifying undead army that charged at the stun guards. The guards froze in fear, their attacks faltering as they stared at the ghostly figures, wondering if these were real spirits. Ding Yi, the first patriarch, shouted to calm his men, insisting these were just undead monsters Head faced many times before. One guard squared off against a skeletal warrior, ready for a fierce battle, but was surprised to see a health bar above it. It was a level 20 undead skeleton, matching Yin Qi's level. Still, fear gripped the guards tightly. Ding Yi's face twisted with anger at his men's hesitation, and to push them into action, he promised a bonus to anyone who caught the intruder. The thought of a reward steeled their nerves. But when the guards turned back toward Yin Che, he had vanished without a trace. Puzzled, they scanned the area, unsure where he went. Using his summoned undead as a distraction, Yin Che observed the chaos from afar. He knew his current undead were too weak to win outright. Stronger souls were needed to overpower the guards, but had already made contracts with the 20 strongest souls nearby in the mirror world, and found that his mirror world exploration was limited. He couldn't move beyond 200 meters from his entry point. To find better undead, he'd have to enter from different spots next time. Before he could plan further, he noticed Xiao Xi, who had been distracting the guards, was discovered hiding in the woods. A sneering guard mocked the disguised boy, joking about the reward for capturing him. Without hesitation, Yin Che sprang from the shadows, swiftly and accurately taking down the guards, threatening his friend. With the way clear, Yin Che grabbed the shocked Xiao Xi and told him it was time to leave. Watching the chaos Head caused, with his undead army keeping the guards busy, Yin Che decided their mission was complete. It was time to get out, escape the danger, and carefully examine all the new rewards from their daring raid. As Yin Che and Xiao Xi made their getaway, the remaining Ding family soldiers battled the relentless skeletons. The guards struck hard, smashing bones, and thinking the fight was easy since the undead seemed weak. But their relief vanished fast. Every skeleton they destroyed immediately reassembled without a scratch. The guards kept fighting, only to see the skeletons rise again and again. Just when morale hit the floor, Dingu, the calm and powerful level 52 third family head, appeared casually smoking. He understood these skeletons were summoned beings, and that each revival drained the summoner's magic. Smiling confidently, he said the trick was to keep killing them until their master ran out of power. Later, the old master, the formidable family leader with a long white beard, returned. The first thing he asked was whether their important guest, Miss Yin Cha, had left. Inside, his son Ding Hao bowed deeply and apologized for failing to keep her there. He explained how the bold intruder had caused a ruckus, shouting loudly and even smashing a window, which frightened their guest away. The old master, Ding Dan, son of the famed hero Ding Kun and a fierce level 57 fighter, exploded with rage. He berated his son for the total security collapse, furious that the intruder had slipped in and vanished without being caught. Ding Hao hung his head, accepting full blame, but quickly offered some hopeful news. Even with all the chaos, Miss Yin Cha still agreed to enter the hero's dungeon, meaning the reputation of Yin Qi's grandfather, hero Ding Kun, wasn't completely ruined. This didn't calm the furious patriarch, Ding Dan, who vowed to hunt down the culprits without mercy. Impatiently, he ordered his son to quickly check what else had been stolen. Far from the turmoil, Yin Che examined what had gained. He glanced at the temporary dungeon pass he had taken, which was under Xiao Xi's name. He now had the pass, his main goal, but still needed someone to escort him into the hero's dungeon. He decided not to rush that problem yet. Looking over the rest of his loot from the Ding family's mansion raid, he realized it was very rewarding. Head jumped up to level 20, and although his powerful chimera bone ring was nearly broken from blocking attacks, Head grabbed over 10 valuable skill books. One book taught chant skills, all support types. He learned the battle song chant, which boosted critical hit rate and damage but lowered defense. Instantly, Yin Che thought of its reverse version, shield song chant, which would do the opposite. Excited, he realized by mastering and reversing these support skills, he could hugely improve his stats. With these buffs and a new passive skill that raised his strength, Yunche felt confident he could easily overpower anyone his level by pure stats alone. Besides the skill books, the Dungeon Lord dropped a rare level 30 item, Corrupted Knight's Armor, which would be useful later. But more than the levels, skills, or equipment, the biggest one was finally upgrading his hidden skill, Mirror World, to level 2. Thinking about these new powers, Yunche knew his necromantic summons made him much stronger, but he also understood there was still room to grow. Remembering the statue of hero Ding Kun, Yunche guessed his enemy was at least an S-rank berserker. To have any hope of defeating him, Yunche knew he'd need to reach level 50 or higher, and, more importantly, find to make a contract with an S-rank necromantic spirit. Later, safely away from the Ding family compound, a still nervous Xiao Xi asked Yunche if anyone was following them. Yunche stayed calm, saying they had lost any pursuers since no one had seen their faces. But Xiao Xi couldn't shake his unease, and Yunche realized how tough the whole experience must have been for him. Seeing his current undead army was too weak, Yunche started planning his next move. He asked Xiao Xi if there were any nearby dungeons where a powerful person had died. When Xiao Xi looked puzzled, Yunche explained he needed a higher-level dungeon to level up faster, adding the powerful person was important for something he'd explain later. After thinking a moment, Xiao Xi confirmed such a place existed but hesitated, worried. He said it was the school's private dungeon and no one could sneak in. This gave Yunche pause as he thought about the tightly controlled, heavily guarded dungeon, but he didn't back down. He decided if normal entry was impossible, he would find special ways to get inside. To start, Yunche met with his class teacher, offering a rare, valuable purple-quality skill book for the Wanderer class, stolen from the Ding family, as a bribe. The plan worked. The teacher, thinking Yunche had strong support, became more cooperative. He admitted that dungeon access was usually fixed and hard to change, but he shared a loophole. The dungeon was open for graduating students, and while Yunche didn't qualify normally, a teacher's recommendation for an outstanding student could grant entry. Convinced Yunche had great potential, the teacher promised to secure him a spot. The plan worked perfectly. Yunche joined the group of students heading into the school's valiant dungeon. Some students were focused and serious, while others tried to flatter those stronger than them. One student grimly admitted this might be his last chance to level up, and another gratefully thanked the hero for the opportunity. As Yunche stepped toward the glowing entrance, a strange feeling of unease settled over him. Something about this dungeon felt off. The teacher eagerly explained that the hero once fought here, and that remnants of his power might still linger inside. Nearby, Xiao Xi listened silently, his face darkening. He realized with horror that, according to the Empire's false history, this was the dungeon where hero Ding Kun had slain Xiao Xi's great-grandfather, Xiao En, labeled a traitor. Knowing the ugly truth, Xiao Xi hesitated, torn over whether to tell Yunche what he really knew about the dungeon's past. As the students gathered by the entrance, the teacher warned them one last time. This was a high-level dungeon, so they had to be careful and stay within their limits. Then, he pointed to a red-haired armored student named Little Xie and ordered him to keep an eye on Yunche and Xiao Xi. Little Xie was annoyed, complaining that babysitting them would ruin his chances of leveling up. The teacher pushed him, telling him to stop whining and reminding him the dungeon was open now. He grumbled about why younger students were even allowed in. Little Xie grudgingly entered the dungeon with the others, telling Yunche and Xiao Xi to stay back and not cause any trouble, threatening to leave them behind if they became a problem. Inside the massive chamber lit by a purple glow, Yunche quietly scanned his surroundings. The dungeon was supposed to be for levels 20 to 40, but his instincts from his past life screamed danger. A heavy unease washed over him, signaling a threat far beyond what a normal dungeon of this level should have. As the students ventured deeper into the glowing purple valiant dungeon, Yunche spotted Yun Yin and her blonde companion, Yun Cha, inside. He wondered how these younger students were even allowed in. Little Xie, who was supposed to watch over Yunche, noticed the girls too and pointed them out to another armored student nearby. That student immediately started daydreaming about escorting the pretty girls, but his thoughts were quickly shut down when a taller, serious student in a helmet smacked him and told him to stop fantasizing. The older student explained that Yun Yin and Yun Cha were both strong fighters, each above level 30, and scoffed that the daydreaming boy wasn't nearly good enough for them. Embarrassed, the boy mumbled that he was just joking. Meanwhile, the older students continued their conversation as the daydreamer kept his eyes on Yun Cha and Yun Yin. To everyone's surprise, the two high-level younger girls ignored the crowd and walked straight over to Yunche and Xiao Xi. Yunche watched them coming, feeling puzzled. He recognized Yin Cha as the important guest from the Ding family's house, and her confident approach made him suspicious. He wondered if she knew about the original owner of his body or if she was coming for Ding Su, whom Yin Che had embarrassed publicly. Yin Cha approached openly and with a friendly smile. She said she had seen Yin Che at the memorial hall and praised his fighting skills, adding that his voice was unique. Yin Che wasn't sure what to make of it, thinking she might just be making small talk. But then, Yin Cha's eyes glowed gold as she leaned in closer and said she recognized his voice from the sound of glass breaking when he escaped from the Ding family's residence. Yin Che was shocked. He realized with a start that this powerful girl had recognized him as the intruder just from a few words. He quickly shouted in surprise. After making her point clear, Yin Cha's outfit changed into white, mage-style battle clothes. Yin followed suit, donning a dark green energy suit. Yin Cha told the stunned Yin Che they would explore the dungeon first, then walked away with her friend. As they left, Yin Che thought carefully about what had just happened. He knew he was the intruder, but chose not to reveal it openly, instead sending a subtle warning. This made him wonder if Ding Su had also recognized his voice during their earlier fight. Still, Yin Che decided not to stress about it for now. He felt sure that if the Ding family didn't act fast, his rapid leveling would soon make him strong enough to face any danger. Seeing her friendly behavior, he decided to send a warning back. He called out, telling them to stay cautious because his instincts said the dungeon was unusually risky. Yin Cha stopped and nodded, telling her friend the place felt strange. She added that with her high level, the dungeon shouldn't be this unsettling. Giving Yin Che a final knowing smile, she thanked him for the warning and continued on with Yunin. Their brief friendly chat didn't go unnoticed. The older students around them watched in shock, whispering about why the usually cold Yin Cha was acting so familiar with him. Fueled by jealousy, they crowded around Yin Che, asking about his connection to her and demanding an introduction. Not interested in the drama, Yin Che cut them off and told them that he and Xiao Xi were leaving the group to explore on their own. The older students were shocked by Yin Chi's boldness and warned him that, as younger students, the level 20 monsters would definitely defeat them. Surprisingly, their supervisor, Little Xie, told everyone to let the two be. He argued that if Yin Che was close with someone as strong as Yin Cha, then his own level had to be high. When others reminded him of their teacher's rules, Little Xie's real reason came out in his thoughts. He wanted to keep all the rare crystals for himself and didn't want to share the rewards. So letting Yin Che and Xiao Xi go was perfect. He ended by telling everyone to ignore them, saying they had emergency signal guns if things went wrong. As Yin Che and Xiao Xi walked off, Little Xie watched with jealousy and anger. He couldn't understand why a simple kid caught Yin Cha's attention. His envy turned dark, and he decided that if Yin Che was so cocky, he deserved to die. Later, as Yin Che and the others entered the dungeon, an angry Ding Su appeared at the entrance. A male staff member and a woman asked what he was doing there. Furious, Ding Su grabbed the man's shirt, demanding to know if a group had just gone inside. This outburst came after a frustrating meeting with his family elders. When Ding Su tried to tell them that Yin Che and Xiao Xi were the ones who raided their home, his father, Ding Hao, dismissed him coldly. He told him not to blame the family for his embarrassment and said he didn't have time for such small issues. Ding Su insisted he recognized the voices from the raid, but Ding Hao was skeptical, saying the intruders were too skilled to be just students and had easily escaped the guards. Ding Hao told Ding Su that unless he could prove the intruders were stronger than the guards, he wouldn't back his claim. The family leader, Ding Dan, coldly told him to leave the grown-ups to handle serious matters. Rejected by his family, Ding Su had no choice but to take action himself. At the dungeon entrance, he confronted a staff member again, fiercely declaring that since Yin Che and Xiao Xi were inside, he had to chase after them. Inside the dungeon, Yin Che was battling a fierce level 20 greed demon crystal giant made of sharp blue crystals. The monster attacked with powerful strikes, and just as Yin Che dodged, a stronger foe appeared. A level 30 greed demon crystal eye. It fired a devastating purple energy beam directly at him. Seeing the threat, Yin Che braced himself for the hit. From a distance, a panicked Xiao Xi yelled Yin Chi's name and used a support skill. Suddenly, golden shields with angel wings appeared around Yin Che, guarding him from blast. The skill, called Surrounding Shield, provided 500 durability and 700 defense for 3 minutes. Xiao Xi didn't stop there. He shouted a motivational yell that wrapped Yin Che in an aura, boosting his attack and speed by 5%, showing how fast he was becoming a great support. With Xiao Xi's help, Yin Che launched a flurry of powerful strikes at the massive crystal beast. His Trick Blade skill, boosting attacks by 70%, helped him smash the level 30 Eye of the Mountain with a final heavy blow. The win paid off quickly. Yunche reached level 21 and gained 3 attribute points. Xiao Xi cheered too, surprised as he hit level 11 and got 3 points himself. Yunche explained that the shield and motivational skills came from the stolen Ding family books, and they were very handy. Looking at the shattered monsters, Yunche thought about how much their teamwork had improved. Yunche knew the monsters here were tougher than usual, but with Xiao Xi's new support skills, the battles became much easier to manage. As they ventured further into the crystal caves, Yunche recalled what his teacher had told him about a rare creature called the Obsidian Beast. The teacher said that defeating it might reward a rare support skill book for gravitational pull. A perfect match since Yunche had already spotted its reverse form, Force Field Zone, in his Mirror World skill list, which was crucial for his future plans. But catching that beast wasn't his only target. He looked over the vast, eerie landscape and remembered that many powerful adventurers had died in this dungeon, and their souls might still linger where they fell. That meant a chance to find strong, undead spirits to add to his growing army. Suddenly, a wave of danger hit him, and his eyes grew wide. Down in the canyon, a massive creature made of dark, glowing purple rock appeared. Not just one, but a whole group of elite obsidian beasts moving together through the Crystal Pillar Canyon. From a high cliff, Yunche and Xiao Xi watched in surprise as the beasts marched in a large pack, traveling at least a kilometer, far beyond their usual range. This strange, organized behavior made Yunche mutter, "Wanderer type." He realized they were facing something bigger and smarter. The way these beasts acted reminded Yunche of a special kind of monster, so he began explaining what a wanderer type really meant. These rare creatures don't stay in one place. They roam freely across the dungeon map. They're much stronger than regular monsters of the same level and can easily overpower unprepared adventurers. In the early days, before people became powerful and learned to control dungeons, encountering a wanderer type was often a deadly challenge just to survive. What made them even more dangerous was that they weren't confined to the dungeon. They could wander outside and threaten nearby towns, causing destruction and loss of life. But Yunche also knew that with great danger came great reward. Wanderer-type monsters dropped far better experience and rare items than normal creatures, making them tempting targets for brave adventurers willing to take the risk. Seeing the large group of obsidian beasts, Yunche knew he had to be careful. These monsters were far too strong to fight head-on, so he decided to observe their abilities first and search for any weaknesses. His first observation revealed they had tough defenses. The level 30 obsidian beasts had a constant healing ability, which made them very difficult to wear down. Before Yunche could come up with a new strategy, the beasts launched an attack, firing a coordinated volley of powerful energy beams called mana rays. Using his speed, Yunche dodged through the dense barrage, aided by the winged shield Xiao Xi had cast for protection. But there were too many beams coming too fast. Eventually, one hit him, cutting his skin and sending a sharp pain through his back. He realized even his speed wasn't enough to avoid all the attacks. A quick glance at his health bar showed Yunche was in serious trouble. His HP had dropped a lot. He knew his body was weak, with low health and poor defense. Without Xiao Xi's protective shield, that one hit would have caused much worse damage. Realizing his limits, Yunche changed tactics. He called forth his undead skeleton army, flickering with eerie green flames, hoping they could hold off the obsidian beasts. But the monsters were too strong, ripping through his summons fast as their health bars shrank quickly. Frustrated, Yunche admitted even his undead troops weren't enough to stop these powerful foes. He wisely pulled back, relieved that the big beasts were slow, giving him some breathing room. His low HP and defense were clear problems that couldn't be fixed instantly. Yunche understood the only way to defeat these beasts was to rely on Xiao Xi's defensive skills. But for that, Xiao Xi needed to get stronger. Yunche explained the new plan to his friend. They would hunt weaker monsters first to level up. They moved to a spot where Yunche had spotted some easier enemies before, perfect for helping Xiao Xi gain experience. In team fights, the shield bearer takes the hits to protect others, allowing them to safely attack from afar. Following Yunche's advice to aim for S rank, Xiao Xi had been investing all his new stat points into defense. Thanks to that build and the armor they stole from the Ding family, Xiao Xi was now a solid shield bearer, able to block hits from level 20 monsters with barely a scratch. Under Yunche's guidance, Xiao Xi worked hard to become a skilled shield bearer. From a distance, Yunche called out tips, showing him how to stand steady, shift his weight, and angle his shield just right to block attacks. Putting this into practice, Xiao Xi managed to stop a strong blow from a crystal monster. He smiled, proud to see his progress. A message popped up showing his shield's durability was lasting much longer now. but he wasn't perfect yet. As Yin-che warned him about follow-up strikes, the monster hit again, catching Xiao Xi off balance and knocking him down. Just before the monster could finish him off, Yin-che leapt in to block the attack, saving his friend. Using the chance, he explained why predicting the enemy's next move was so important. He told Xiao Xi to avoid big sweeping shield swings that leave openings, and instead use small, quick blocks that allow him to counterattack. Patting Xiao Xi on the shoulder, Yin-che gave one last tip. Stay alert, but keep your body relaxed, tensing only at impact to save energy and react faster. Training went on non-stop. With a final encouraging tap on Xiao Xi's armor, Yin-che urged him to keep improving. Standing behind his friend, he reminded him of another key rule for shield bearers. Always watch out for teammates behind you. Hearing this, Xiao Xi's face showed a quiet but strong determination. They put their training into action, battling monsters together in the dungeon. Yin-che reminded Xiao Xi of an important rule. When stats are close, skill makes all the difference. Their teamwork showed results. After defeating another monster, Yin-che leveled up again, reaching level 22, pleased with how far they'd come. With Xiao Xi growing more confident in battle, they could fight smarter and faster, letting Yin-che gain experience even quicker. The biggest win was for Xiao Xi, who excitedly announced he'd hit level 15, a crucial milestone. Now, he could learn a powerful new skill from one of the stolen books. Holding up the glowing rare book for shield armor, he saw it would add an extra protective layer to his shield, boosting durability and defense that scaled with his stats, making him an even tougher tank. At last, Xiao Xi learned shield armor, the last skill from the Ding family's collection he could use. The skill created a shining green armor layer over his summoned shield, greatly increasing its defense. Yin-che knew this boost would be vital when facing the obsidian beast again. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the Crystal Pillar Canyon, 3 teachers watched the same pack of elite obsidian wanderer beasts Yin-che and Xiao Xi had spotted. Concerned by the large group of dangerous wanderers, the teachers agreed the monsters were too risky for students and decided they must be eliminated. They knew the task ahead wouldn't be easy. While regular level 30 monsters were manageable, these elite wanderer types were on a whole different level. Stronger, smarter, and much less predictable. Their conversation was cut short when a student's distress signal lit up the sky. Changing plans quickly, the teachers decided to stop hunting and focus on the rescue mission. As they prepared to leave, their concern about the dangerous wanderers was clear. They understood that any student who accidentally crossed paths with those beasts would be in serious trouble. While the team got ready to head out, one of the teachers, Peng Zheng, offered to stay behind just in case things got worse. The leader, Lei, was about to agree when Yin-che and Xiao Xi suddenly appeared. Yin-che shared his own worry and suggested he and Xiao Xi could keep an eye on the wanderers instead. He explained that if the rescue team ran into more powerful monsters, 2 teachers might not be enough. Calmly approaching the surprised teachers, Yin-che pointed out the wanderers were slow and hadn't noticed them yet. He promised to keep a safe distance and just observe, urging the teachers to go ahead without worry. After a pause, the teachers agreed. But before leaving, Lei gave Yin-che a serious warning. These monsters were deadly, and neither Yin-che nor Xiao should act rashly or try to fight. But Yin-che had no intention of hiding. The moment the teachers disappeared, he launched his own attack on the obsidian beasts, boldly declaring it was the monsters who wouldn't be getting away. He put their new strategy into motion. Yin-che called forth his undead army to stand as the first line of defense, absorbing the initial powerful energy blasts from the beasts. This time, the skeletons weren't alone. Xiao Xi, now a tough tank, activated both his surrounding shield and new shield armor skills, creating an almost impenetrable barrier protecting the undead soldiers. The monster's devastating energy beams bounced harmlessly off the shields, barely damaging the skeletal defenders. While the beast focused on his unbreakable frontline, Yin-che slipped through the chaos and unleashed a series of powerful punches, smashing the shining crystal bodies of the elite monsters. He zeroed in on one glowing beast, watching its health shrink with each strike. With a final sharp hit, he shattered the creature's core, and the strong level 30 monster collapsed. Its defeat triggered a beam of light, signaling valuable loot. Beating one of these elite wanderers gave Yin-che a thrill. He realized he was getting better at combining his attacks with Xiao Xi's defenses and his undead army. Still, he knew his current strength was far below what he had in his past life. Even though his reverse skills boosted his damage, his support class, naturally low base attack, kept holding him back. Yin-che couldn't help thinking about how to push his raw damage even higher, and his mind drifted to the rewards he had gained from the recent fight, including the titles earned from slaying fearsome foes. The battle had also pushed him up another level, and he felt genuinely pleased after seeing how much experience rare elite monsters were worth. When Yunche approached the fallen creature to collect its drops, a system notification appeared, confirming that he had obtained some highly valuable rewards. As he examined the items left behind, his eyes went wide with shock. Among the loot was an incredibly strong weapon with enormous attack power, a massive glowing pink crystal longsword that granted an astonishing plus 552 attack bonus. A faint grin spread across Yunqi's face as he understood this weapon perfectly solved his biggest weakness. Feeling the surge of strength, Yunche became confident that future battles would be far less troublesome. Unfortunately, his fortune didn't extend to everything. The second drop was a skill book, but his excitement faded when he realized it wasn't the gravitational pull ability he had been hoping for. He could only assume that the drop rate for that skill was extremely low. Standing at the edge of the cliff, wishing for better luck and another chance to hunt those high-reward wandering monsters, Yunqi's thoughts were suddenly interrupted. A sudden blast of red light burst across the distant sky like a firework. Yunche recognized the signal the moment he saw it, his expression turning serious. This wasn't an ordinary call for help. It was a unique flare used only by the Academy's teacher squads, which meant something had gone terribly wrong. The instructors, who had rushed out believing students were in danger, had instead walked straight into a nightmare. They had discovered an enormous swarm of elite wanderer monsters clustered tightly around the mouth of a single cave. None of them could figure out why so many high-level creatures had gathered in one place. Not long after, Yunche, Xiao Xi, Yunsha, and Yunin reached the area as well. They were equally shocked by the overwhelming number of monsters crowding the surroundings. One of the teachers spoke up, explaining that they had arrived after spotting the flare and still had no clear idea of the situation. He gestured toward the cave, saying the signal was coming from within and that the missing students were likely trapped inside. Another instructor then described their current problem. They wanted to launch a rescue, but the monster horde was far too large. Even with every teacher present, there simply weren't enough fighters to force a path through. When the teachers noticed the arrival of the powerful Yun Cha and Yunin, one of them turned to them with hope, saying their help could make all the difference. Yun Cha didn't pause for even a moment before agreeing, stating that protecting and saving students was their responsibility. She immediately stepped forward to command the fight, calling forth a radiant star-shaped magic construct and unleashing a wide area support spell known as the Starlight Mystic Art. Waves of golden light spread over the teachers and students, surrounding them completely and sharply boosting their morale and combat strength. With her companions now greatly empowered, Yinsha shifted her focus to the monster horde and unleashed a crushing spell known as gravitational pressure, flattening a vast section of the wandering beasts in one strike. At the same moment, Yunin entered the battle with her own lethal technique, Hidden Thorn, which effortlessly shattered a level 30 radiant crystal spike and revealed just how terrifying her strength was. Together, their power was overwhelming. The surrounding students and teachers could only stare in disbelief as the once unstoppable group of monsters was wiped out. Observing their performance, Yinshe felt deeply impressed. He realized that not only were their weapons and gear exceptional, but their mastery over their abilities was equally refined. Once the immediate danger was dealt with, Yinshi's thoughts shifted to a larger question. As the rescue team advanced toward the cave, he wondered what kind of force could draw so many high-level wanderer monsters to one location. Choosing to look into it himself, he instructed Xiao Xi to remain with the main force while he moved ahead alone to investigate. Activating his newly improved skill, Mirror Walk, Yinshe faded from the physical world and stepped into the parallel mirror realm. He scanned the unusual purple-hued surroundings and quickly realized that the dungeon's crystal-filled terrain provided countless reflective surfaces, allowing him to slip into the mirror realm whenever he wished. Still, Yinshe understood that this ability wasn't without restrictions. He hadn't yet learned how to exit the dimension freely, recalling how he had been forcibly expelled when the time limit ended during the raid on the Ding family estate, leaving him unable to re-enter afterward. As Yinshe traveled through the mirrored version of the cave, drifting past the hazy, intangible images of other adventurers, he sensed something was off. The humans appeared as reflections, yet the monsters were completely absent. Examining the area more carefully, he noticed that the corpses of monsters he had previously slain were present in solid form within this realm. This observation helped him grasp an important rule of his power. Aside from himself, living beings seemed unable to exist physically in the mirror world, while the dead could. He soon identified them as a team of senior students, among them someone known as Little Xie. From this, he concluded that they were likely the cause of the massive gathering of wanderer monsters and, after being pushed to their limits, had launched the emergency signal. Even so, the biggest question remained unanswered. What hidden presence inside the cave could lure so many dangerous creatures to this single place? Determined to uncover the truth, Yun Che pressed onward. All at once, Yun Che came to a dead stop, his body stiffening as shock and disbelief flashed across his face. What stood before him was the dungeon's real prize, a vast stretch of luminous green crystal or glowing softly in the darkness. In that moment, everything made sense, and he finally understood why little Xie and the others had dared to venture this far. Dungeons were known to hide rare materials that could never be found in the outside world, resources used to forge extraordinary equipment, and these green crystals were among the most valuable, worth far more than any precious metal. When Yun Che focused on one of the crystals, a system prompt appeared, identifying it as Mirror Image Crystal Ore. The message stated that it could be collected and brought out of the mirror realm, but what truly caught his attention was another option asking if he wished to return to the real world from that spot. His heart skipped a beat at the implication. To test his theory, Yun Che touched an ordinary blue crystal nearby, only to see the exact same message appear. A slow, knowing grin formed on his face as everything clicked into place. He finally realized that any reflective surface could serve as a doorway, allowing him to exit the mirror world whenever he pleased. Walking among the glowing green formations, Yun Che casually picked up a chunk of the priceless ore. For the moment, though, he chose to concentrate on surveying the enormous crystal vein before him. The deeper he went, the more stunned he became. The scale of the deposit was unbelievable, a treasure so massive that anyone who mined it completely would instantly become unimaginably wealthy. Yun Che finally understood why such a massive number of high-level wanderer monsters had been stationed outside the cave. They weren't there by chance. They had been attracted to, and were likely protecting, the priceless treasure hidden within. Meanwhile, back in the real world, the rescue operation was in full swing. Yun Cha repeatedly unleashed crushing spells like gravitational pressure, while Yun In charged in behind her, spinning into a lethal dual-blade dance that shredded whatever enemies remained. Not content with simply supporting others, Yun Cha also revealed her own overwhelming offense, casting Star Rain Art, a terrifying wide-range spell that rained destruction across the battlefield. The watching students and teachers were left dumbfounded, silently wondering whether every one of the girls' abilities was at epic rank, as their strength clearly surpassed that of the instructors. With one final, massive cross-shaped slash, the last wanderer monster guarding the cave entrance fell. One of the seniors, little Xie, let out a shaky laugh and admitted how relieved he was, saying he truly believed he wouldn't make it out alive. Yunin, ever cautious, immediately cut off his relief and warned him not to let his guard down. She reminded him that they still had to escape the dungeon itself, and that everyone was already worn out from the fierce battle. Yun Chan nodded in agreement, then added with a calm, confident smile that with their strength backing the group, leaving should be far easier than the desperate fight they had just endured. As the rescued seniors were guided away from the cave, Yun Cha suddenly stopped, her eyes widening as a sense of unease washed over her. Alarm and tension spread across her face just as terrified screams erupted from the students behind her. The cause of their panic quickly became clear. The route ahead, which had been cleared only moments earlier, was now once again blocked by an enormous and terrifying mass of elite wanderer monsters. It felt as though every wanderer monster in the entire dungeon had rushed to this single location, forming an overwhelming wall that completely cut off their escape route. While the rescue team in the real world was struggling against the sudden resurgence of the wanderer horde, Yun Che continued moving alone through the mirror realm. He navigated the twisted, maze-like tunnels of the crystal cave, guided only by the eerie green light shining from the rare or veins around him. Then, without warning, Yun Che halted, his eyes stretching wide in pure disbelief at the scene ahead. What he had found was breathtaking. A massive crystal structure shaped like an ancient tree rose all the way to the ceiling of the cave, and at its very peak hovered a brilliant, star-shaped crystal core that throbbed with terrifying power. Yun Che recognized it instantly. This was the dungeon's legendary hidden prize. As he stepped closer, stories he had once heard surfaced in his mind. If the various crystal ores were the dungeon's rare exports, then this core was its ultimate treasure, the single most precious object it could produce. Such secret treasures were formed from the essence of all special dungeon resources, taking an unknown and extremely long time to come into existence. They were so rare that most people would never witness one in their entire lives. More importantly, every secret treasure always possessed an extraordinary and unique effect. Reaching out toward the radiant object, Yun Che understood that he had discovered the true core of the valiant dungeon itself. A satisfied smile appeared on his face as he extended his hand toward the glowing green crystal. At that moment, a system panel appeared, identifying it as a mirror image crystal core. It was listed as a unique grade secret treasure. The item's description also made it clear that this was only a replica of the dungeon's true secret treasure. Even so, Yunche felt a surge of excitement at what he had found. Still, as he held the glowing core in his hand, a strange sense of unease crept into his mind. He reasoned that just as the crystal ores had drawn in countless wanderer monsters, a treasure of this level should logically be guarded by something far stronger than anything he had encountered so far. Not wanting to linger, Yunche prepared to activate the treasure and leave immediately. A system interface appeared in front of him, revealing an unexpected condition. Whether he used the item or simply took it with him, it would consume 10 minutes of his remaining mirror walk duration, a restriction that caught him completely off guard. Back in the real world, just as the rescued students were beginning to relax, a heavy and ominous rumble echoed through the cave, shaking the ground beneath everyone's feet. Teachers and students alike looked around in fear, and even the powerful Yun Sha and Yun Yin stiffened, their faces filled with shock and unease. From behind the towering crystal structures, a new and terrifying presence emerged. It was an enormous monster, a vastly larger and more menacing version of the wanderer creatures they had only just finished fighting. What stood before them was a wandering lord, a rare enemy that existed apart from the dungeon's main boss and far surpassed ordinary bosses in strength. Worse still, this monster wasn't alone. It commanded a massive swarm of elite followers, forming a force far beyond what they could realistically defeat. Fear spread like wildfire. One student shouted in panic, insisting that wandering lords were only supposed to appear in high-tier dungeons. Despair quickly followed, and many began to believe that death was unavoidable. Just as the group was on the verge of breaking down, Yun Cha's steady and commanding voice rang out above the chaos. She ordered everyone to steady themselves, emphasizing that survival depended on unity and escape, not blind panic. Taking firm control of the situation, she pointed toward a narrow canyon nearby, declaring it the only exit from the basin they were trapped in. She laid out a simple strategy. If they could smash through the monster ranks and escape the basin, their superior speed would allow them to flee successfully. With a final rallying cry, Yun Cha activated her Starlight Mystic art once more, empowering the entire group. She commanded everyone to give everything they had and charge toward the canyon without hesitation. Moved by her leadership, the head instructor, Li, immediately stepped forward, declaring that their priority was to ensure the student's survival. Activating his light-refracting shield, he announced that the teachers would rotate as the frontline attackers, with him leading the first charge. Without waiting another second, he plunged into the sea of monsters, carving out an opening for the others to follow. The rest of the teachers and students rushed forward right behind him, their combined strikes creating a strong surge that forced the enemy line back. With enemies pressing in from every direction, the group tightened their formation, slowly but steadily forcing their way toward the canyon as the teachers shouted for everyone to endure. Just when it looked like they might succeed, the massive wandering lord finally intervened. It released a thunderous roar, activating a skill known as Battle Cry Rally. In response, dormant crystal monsters throughout the entire dungeon suddenly awakened and began moving, all marching straight toward the basin. They flooded into the canyon in overwhelming numbers, forming an endless tide of enemies that completely sealed off the rescue team's escape. Teachers and students stared in hopeless disbelief as their only path out vanished under countless monsters, unable to understand where so many had come from. As if things weren't already desperate enough, the Wandering Lord activated another ability, Crystal Aura. A vast crimson glow spread over the battlefield, empowering every nearby monster with a terrifying 20% boost to health, attack, and defense. The front line collapsed almost instantly, students screaming in shock as the monster's attacks suddenly became unbearably strong. The strengthened enemy force claimed its first casualty when a teacher was struck by multiple energy beams, shouting that the damage was impossible to heal before he was overwhelmed and slain. A nearby student cried out in terror, announcing that a teacher had fallen. As fear threatened to tear the group apart, Yinsha stepped in once again and seized control. She ordered the shield users to move forward and form a solid barrier, while commanding the priests to focus all healing on keeping the shield bearers alive. Even as she issued her firm orders, Yinsha knew the truth of their situation. They were exhausted, cornered, and barely managing to hold their ground. What frightened her the most was the realization that the Wandering Lord itself still hadn't truly entered the fight. One instructor, his expression grim, admitted that continuing like this was pointless and that there was no way they could force a breakthrough. Believing their formation was doomed, one of the more fearful teachers made a selfish decision to abandon the group. Activating a stealth ability, he shouted that survival was now an individual matter and dashed off, trying to slip past the monsters and flee alone. Instructor Li yelled after him, warning that the stealth wouldn't last long enough to save him. Sadly, his warning proved correct. The fleeing teacher was quickly exposed when a small turtle-shaped crystal creature burst from the ground, cutting off his escape. As the teacher stood frozen in panic, the massive Wandering Lord, which had been silently observing until now, finally took action. It unleashed a catastrophic beam of raw energy that slammed into the spot where the lone teacher stood. In an instant, he was completely erased, reduced to nothing but ash by the Lord's overwhelming power. The blast didn't stop there. It shattered the canyon walls as well, triggering a massive collapse that buried the only escape path under tons of rock. The remaining teachers and students could only stare in stunned terror at the monstrous display of strength. One of them, pale with despair, muttered that there was no longer any way out. Having blocked off their final route of escape, the towering Wandering Lord shifted its focus back to the trapped group, its crystalline eyes blazing as it began charging another devastating energy attack. A student cried out in pure despair, convinced that their end had come and that they would be the monster's next victim. With no chance of escaping the incoming attack, the group braced themselves for the inevitable, knowing a blast of that size was impossible to block. Yet at the final moment, one of the students suddenly summoned a massive and ornate shield that appeared directly in front of them. It was an epic grade level 70 item known as the Rock Mountain Shield, famous for its enormous defense and resistance. The Wandering Lord's energy beam crashed into the huge shield with terrifying force, shoving it backward as the pressure threatened to shatter it. The teachers and the stronger students rushed forward to brace the shield, understanding that if it collapsed, none of them would survive. Yun Cha, her face tight with strain, revealed the reasoning behind their desperate attempt. Because the shield was a level 70 item, its durability was extremely high. However, its level requirement was far beyond their strength, meaning no one in the group could actually equip it to gain its stat bonuses. As a result, they were forced to hold the enormous and heavy object in place using their own physical strength. She knew this was only a temporary measure, a reckless method that could barely buy them any time. While the students and teachers struggled to resist the Wandering Lord's attack, their morale slowly began to crumble. One of the rescued seniors could not understand why a monster with such overwhelming power existed in the school's dungeon. Another student, his face filled with fear and anger, turned his frustration toward the teachers and blamed them for bringing everyone into such danger. One of the instructors, his expression grim, began to wonder if their exhausting efforts to save the trapped students had ultimately been meaningless. Nearby, the teacher Lei watched the scene unfold with a painful expression on his face. The only reassurance in Lei's mind had been that the two younger students, Yun Che and Xiao Xi, were far from the battlefield and safely out of harm's way. That fragile comfort vanished in an instant. Out of nowhere, Xiao Xi suddenly appeared beside him and forcefully pushed him aside just as a deadly strike descended toward them. Lei was left stunned, unable to understand how the boy who had been told to remain near the valley had reached them so quickly. Before he could process it, another monster lunged forward, forcing Lei to warn him of the incoming attack. Without hesitation, Xiao Xi activated his skill surround shield in an effort to defend the teacher. The protection barely lasted a moment as the monster's overwhelming power smashed through the barrier, tearing open the group's already fragile perimeter. Their formation collapsed immediately, and with their main tank already injured, the entire group was left dangerously exposed. Nothing remained to slow the relentless advance of the wandering monsters. With the defensive line broken, the creatures surged forward toward the vulnerable survivors. Refusing to retreat, Xiao Xi threw himself into the path of the monsters alone, managing to block several heavy attacks while shielding the injured teacher from harm. Lei watched in stunned disbelief, struggling to reconcile this display of strength with the useless student he had once believed the boy to be. Yet even such determination could not change the outcome. The other shield guards had already lost their defenses, and the protective formation had completely fallen apart. Eventually, Xiao Xi was overwhelmed as well, a brutal strike shattering his armor and launching him through the air. He crashed to the ground, bleeding and powerless, while the monsters advanced to finish him. Seeing the final defender fall, one of the teachers stood frozen in terror, sweat covering his face as the reality of their hopeless situation became undeniable. Just as the monsters were about to overwhelm the defenseless group, a sudden blur of motion tore through the chaos. The teacher stared in astonishment as Yun Che suddenly appeared, standing calmly atop the body of a fallen monster. In his grip rested a massive crystal longsword glowing with a brilliant light, while his eyes carried a chilling and unwavering calm. His gaze briefly moved toward Xiao Xi, who lay battered and bleeding on the ground, silently acknowledging the courage his friend had shown. Moments later, Yun Che shifted his focus toward the approaching monsters, his posture steady and filled with absolute confidence as he made it clear that the rest of the battle now belonged to him. Not long before this moment, Yunche had been standing inside the mirror world, studying the crystal core carefully. It quickly occurred to him that if a replica existed in this dimension, then the genuine version had to still be present in the real world. That realization revealed a powerful advantage, because his mirror world ability meant he could essentially collect the same valuable resource twice. Even so, Yunche understood the limitations of his power. Although he had already gathered 75 pieces of the rare crystal, or bringing all of them back would demand 750 minutes of mirror walk time, a duration he simply did not possess. Each piece required 10 minutes to extract, just like the crystal core itself. Accepting that restriction, Yunche reached a decision. He would secure the real crystal core later, but for the moment, he would use the replica discovered within the mirror world to gain its powerful effects immediately. The system soon confirmed that both the real and mirrored cores had been activated together, doubling the stat boosts and granting him an impressive 40% resistance against light and electric damage. After absorbing the core's power, Yunche stood atop the enormous crystal formation in the real world when a sudden tremor violently shook the cave around him. His expression changed instantly as he sensed something unusual occurring nearby. Curious about the disturbance, he reacted without hesitation, leaping down from the crystal formation to investigate the source of the noise. While descending, Yunche chose to test the new control he had gained over his ability to leave the mirror world whenever he wished. Passing directly through the crystal walls, he slipped once more into the parallel dimension and quickly confirmed that nearly 13 minutes of his mirror walk time still remained. A confident smirk appeared on Yunche's face as he confirmed another important detail about his ability. As long as time still remained on his mirror walk, he could freely move in and out of the mirror dimension whenever he wished. The cooldown would only begin once the entire duration had been exhausted. Wanting to be certain, Yunche immediately tested it by slipping through the crystal walls and returning to the real world without difficulty. The moment he reappeared, however, a shocking scene unfolded before him. The number of monsters had multiplied drastically, far beyond what the crystal or alone could have attracted. Looming above the entire swarm stood the massive Wandering Lord, and Yunche finally realized that this creature had been the true source of the ominous presence he had sensed since the beginning. Recognizing the scale of the threat, his thoughts immediately turned to his friend Xiao Xi. He understood that Xiao Xi and the others were now facing extreme danger. Yet the control he had gained over the mirror world sparked a new idea in his mind. Because he could now enter and leave the dimension at will, Yunche saw a possible way to challenge the seemingly unstoppable boss. With that realization, a strategy quickly formed. He began slipping repeatedly between the mirror world and reality, using the alternate dimension to reposition instantly, avoiding the monster's attacks before reappearing to strike them down. The constant shifting made his movements unpredictable, turning the fight into a deadly series of sudden attacks and swift retreats. The tactic proved highly effective. After defeating several additional elite monsters, Yunche advanced to level 24. Pausing briefly, he assessed his new strength and calculated that with his increased mana and the doubled recovery provided by the crystal cores, he could now stack his Blade of Trickery skill enough to reach a massive 330% boost to his attack power. Even so, Yunche remained clear-headed about the situation. Despite the explosive growth of his abilities, he knew his current strength was still insufficient to directly confront the giant Wandering Lord, a monster far more dangerous than an ordinary dungeon boss. Yunche concluded that reaching at least level 30 was necessary if he wanted a genuine chance of defeating the Wandering Lord, yet he also knew he was still far from that goal. The scene then shifts back to the desperate struggle in the real world where the students and teachers stood on the verge of being wiped out. At the very moment when hope seemed completely gone, Yunche finally emerged from the mirror world and appeared directly in the center of the battlefield. Standing atop the corpse of a fallen monster, he glanced toward Xiao Xi, who lay injured yet unyielding, silently acknowledging the courage his friend had shown. With unwavering resolve, Yunche made it clear that the battle from this point forward would be his responsibility, preparing to confront the entire horde of monsters alone. Having left the mirror world for the final time, he landed solidly on the ground and immediately took control of the situation. Those capable of support abilities were instructed to strengthen him while he engaged the advancing wanderers. Yuncha and Xiao Xi responded without hesitation. The elite student activated her Starlight Mystic Art, while Xiao Xi reinforced him with Surround Shield and Shield Armor, the two abilities greatly increasing Yunqi's spirit and attack strength. Empowered by the buffs, Yunche turned into a force of destruction. His massive crystal longsword carved effortlessly through the ranks of elite monsters, cutting them down one after another. Although the sheer number of enemies was absurd, he understood that he was no longer truly threatened. After absorbing the power of the two crystal core secret treasures, his health had multiplied several times over, and the 40% resistance against light and electric damage made him incredibly resilient against the monster's attacks. The only irritation he felt was the creature's immunity to the confusion effect of his chaotic thorn skill, a limitation that would have otherwise allowed him to eliminate them even faster. The remaining students and teachers could only stare in stunned silence as the battle unfolded before them. Lele Li and the senior students, who had once dismissed Yun Che, now watched with complete disbelief. After checking his status window, they confirmed that he was listed as a support class chanter, yet none of them could understand how someone with that class possessed such overwhelming attack power or what strange ability allowed him to seemingly vanish and reappear across the battlefield. Li, his arm still bleeding from an earlier wound, observed the scene with a mixture of shock and admiration, struggling to accept that the younger student he had been worried about was actually this formidable. Empowered by his newfound strength and durability, Yunche moved like an unstoppable force, cutting through the endless ranks of elite wandering monsters. The enormous number of powerful enemies granted huge amounts of experience, causing his level to rise at a breathtaking pace. Yun Sha, who had once recognized him as the intruder at the Ding residence, could only watch in astonishment. At first she had assumed he was nothing more than a reckless thief, but now she was forced to admit that his strength exceeded anything she had imagined. Yun Yin was equally stunned, left completely speechless by the overwhelming display from the boy who shared her surname. Yun Che continued his relentless assault, slipping in and out of the mirror world to reposition and strike, his movements flashing like streaks of purple energy. One level after another was gained in rapid succession until he quickly reached level 28. The students and teachers who had been moments away from death were left completely bewildered by the sudden turn of events. Among them, the teacher Lei briefly wondered whether Yun Che might actually be some high-level support sent from outside. But after recalling having seen him before, he realized with disbelief that the young warrior before them was truly one of their own students. Little Xie, who stood nearby, was even more stunned, finding it impossible to believe that an ordinary student could possess such overwhelming strength. Yet despite Yun Qi's astonishing performance, the Wandering Lord remained an enormous threat looming over the battlefield. As the gigantic creature prepared to unleash another devastating energy beam, the students and teachers reacted with alarm. Yun Qi's expression grew serious, as he understood clearly that even with all the power he had recently gained, taking that attack head-on would still be fatal. While the Wandering Lord advanced with its beam blazing, the students and teachers, sheltering behind their improvised shield wall, felt the pressure mounting. Once the massive creature moved close enough, the two shields would no longer be able to keep them safe. Seeing that Yun Che had already reduced the number of smaller monsters significantly, the teacher Lei urgently ordered everyone to break away and run toward the other exit. In his mind, no matter how strong Yun Che appeared, defeating the Wandering Lord alone was simply impossible. However, the suggestion quickly sparked objections. One of the students immediately pointed out the main problem. The two enormous shields were far too difficult to move, and abandoning them would leave everyone completely exposed to the Lord's destructive attacks. Another student added that the shields were far too heavy to carry by hand and could only be transported through an inventory, something none of them possessed the ability to do. As the argument began to escalate in panic and frustration, a calm voice suddenly cut through the noise and urged them to leave the matter to him. The one who spoke was Yun Che. With composed determination, he revealed a new plan that placed himself at the center of the risk. His intention was to confront the Wandering Lord directly and draw its attention, allowing the others a chance to escape safely. Lei was stunned by the willingness behind such a decision, struggling to understand what would happen to Yun Che if everyone else fled. Yun Che then began to explain the reasoning behind his plan. From the memories of his past life, Yun Che understood that leaving a Wandering Lord alive would eventually lead to catastrophe, as the creature would gather every monster within the dungeon before wandering into the outside world and unleashing a massive disaster. With firm resolve in his eyes, he made the decision to remain behind and personally bring down the monstrous beast. Activating his blade of trickery, his attack power surged dramatically, reaching an astonishing 350% increase. At the same time, he confirmed that more than 5 minutes still remained on his mirror walk, giving him a crucial advantage for confronting such a powerful opponent. As Yun Che prepared to challenge the Wandering Lord alone, the teacher, Li, reluctantly made the difficult decision to guide the others toward retreat, urging everyone to move quickly. He believed that even someone as strong as Yun Che would eventually be worn down while facing such a massive enemy. In his mind, the faster they escaped, the sooner Yun Che might also find an opportunity to withdraw. When one student doubted Yun Che's confident claim that he could defeat the Lord, Li dismissed it as a courageous attempt meant to calm everyone, knowing well how terrifying the strength of a true wandering lord could be. Forced to retreat alongside the group, Xiao Xi felt a deep sense of helplessness. Looking back with a pained expression, he hated that his only option was to flee while his friend remained behind to face unimaginable danger. Quietly, he could only hope for Yun Che's survival. Meanwhile, Yun Che himself was far from powerless. He continued cutting through the remaining monsters, growing stronger with each defeat, and before long, he gained another level. When the towering Wandering Lord unleashed its destructive energy beam, Yun Che activated Mirror Walk and slipped out of reality entirely. The blazing attack passed harmlessly through the empty space where he had stood moments before. In the next instant, he reappeared behind the creature and delivered a powerful strike with his glowing blade. Yet the result of that attack quickly revealed a harsh truth. The Wandering Lord, revealed to be a level 42 stone golem, possessed terrifyingly high defense, along with a powerful regeneration ability that immediately erased the small amount of damage Yun Che managed to inflict. It became clear to him that at his current level, breaking through the creature's defenses would be nearly impossible. While evading the golem's relentless attacks, Yun Che used the brief openings to study it more carefully and quickly confirmed his suspicion. A large crystal embedded in the monster's head served as its core, marking the obvious weak point. The real difficulty, however, was reaching it. Even with all the enhancements currently boosting him, his attack power still fell short of overcoming the Lord's immense durability and healing. The situation only grew worse as time continued slipping away. A glance at his status revealed that the support buffs granted by the others were beginning to fade. His own mana reserves had also dropped dangerously low, meaning he would soon be unable to maintain the powerful Blade of Trickery skill much longer. After a moment of thought, Yun Che realized he had only one practical solution. He needed to grow stronger by gaining more levels, which meant eliminating the remaining weaker monsters first. Just as he prepared to turn his attention toward them, a sudden beam of bright light burst from a narrow crack in the nearby rock wall. Yun Che's eyes widened the instant he recognized the glow. At that same moment, the massive Wandering Lord also noticed it and, displaying an unsettling level of awareness, immediately fired a devastating energy beam toward the crack. Yun Che reacted by slipping into the mirror world to avoid the attack. However, when he prepared to return, he was shocked to see the beam already targeting the exact position where he would reappear. In a flash of realization, he understood that the cunning boss had already begun predicting his movements. With no time to react, Yun Che was forced back into reality directly within the path of the Wandering Lord's overwhelming energy beam and was instantly caught in the blast. The attack came as a massive continuous beam that rapidly drained Yun Che's health despite his already powerful defenses. He quickly realized that using Mirror Walk to escape was not an option, since less than 4 minutes remained, and such a relentless attack would exhaust the remaining time almost instantly. The only immediate solution was to summon his undead army to absorb the damage in his place. However, Yun Che understood that this would come at a heavy cost. Reviving his summons would consume a large portion of his already depleted mana, leaving him with almost nothing to fuel the attack power he needed for a counterstrike. As the pressure mounted, he briefly considered withdrawing from the fight and regrouping instead. Just when defeat seemed close, another powerful strike suddenly collided with a Wandering Lord's beam. To his surprise, Yun Che saw that Yun Cha, Yun Yin, and even Xiao Xi had returned to the battlefield. Yun Cha explained with a teasing smile that Xiao Xi had insisted they come back to help him. With his back turned, Xiao Xi quickly denied begging and clarified that the number of remaining monsters had dropped enough for the others to escape safely, leaving him free to return and assist. Hearing his friend's decision, Yun Che showed a rare and genuine smile of gratitude as he thanked him. With their numbers strengthened again, Yun Cha immediately took charge of the situation. She warned that the hidden boss remained far too dangerous and suggested that she and the others hold it back, while Yun Che slowly withdrew from the battle. Yun Che, however, firmly rejected the idea. With their support now behind him, he felt there was no longer any reason to restrain himself and decided to fight with everything he had. Backed by his allies, he resumed cutting down the remaining monsters, steadily gaining experience while the last of his mirror walk time ticked away. At the crucial moment, he finally reached level 30, the target he had been aiming for. Now standing at the level he needed, Yunche understood that his attack power had finally reached the point where confronting the Wandering Lord was truly possible. Without hesitation, Yunche equipped the rare level 30 Corrupted Knight's armor he had obtained from the Ding family's dungeon, the heavy gear greatly strengthening his defenses. Yuncha observed him closely and questioned whether he truly intended to strike the Wandering Lord's weak point located on its head. She pointed out that reaching such a height was practically impossible, but Yunche had already prepared for that problem. He revealed that he had finally acquired a skill he had long wanted, the gravitational pull skill book, which he had looted from one of the wandering monsters earlier. The ability allowed the user to draw a target object toward themselves. More importantly, its reversed form, known as gravitational traction, worked in the opposite way, pulling the user toward the chosen target, with the pulling force becoming stronger as the user's strength decreased. With this new movement skill in his arsenal, the Wandering Lord's elevated weak point was no longer unreachable. Yunche activated Blade of Trickery once more, rapidly stacking its effect as his attack power surged higher and higher, and with calm confidence he assured the others that everything was under control. Once his preparations were complete and his power fully built, Yunche extended a hand glowing with swirling purple energy and aimed directly at the giant Wandering Lord's head. The moment he triggered gravitational traction, a powerful force seized his body and dragged him forward at tremendous speed. He shot through the air like a launched projectile, the rocky ground beneath him cracking as he accelerated straight toward the towering monster. In a stunning display of precision and control, he landed perfectly atop the Wandering Lord's head, positioning himself right beside the shining crystal core embedded there, his energized sword humming with destructive power and ready to strike. Far below, Yun Cha and Yunin, who had moments earlier declared such a feat impossible, could only stare upward with frozen expressions of disbelief and astonishment at what they had just witnessed. Now standing directly at the Wandering Lord's weak point, Yunche gathered every ounce of his strength for the final blow. With all the power he had built up, Yunche drove his heavily empowered sword straight into the glowing crystal core, sending a web of cracks rapidly spreading across its surface. Even so, the enormous creature refused to fall quietly. In its final moments, the Wandering Lord released a massive surge of energy from its core, unleashing a desperate explosion meant to destroy the one who had struck it down. Yunche was caught directly in the center of the blast, and his health began dropping rapidly as countless system messages reported the continuous damage tearing through his body. Despite the overwhelming force, his newly strengthened defenses and greatly increased health allowed him to endure the assault. Clenching his teeth, he forced himself to withstand the devastating energy until the blinding light finally faded. When the explosion ended, Yunche was still standing, battered and exhausted but alive. At the same time, the Wandering Lord's gigantic crystal body shattered apart, breaking into countless fragments as confirmation messages appeared announcing his incredible victory. The defeat of the Wandering Lord rewarded him with a massive bonus of 5,000 experience points along with the prestigious title of Wanderer Killer. Even more valuable, the hidden boss left behind 2 legendary quality skill books, Golden Light Shield and Angel's Protection, rewards of extraordinary power and rarity. The surge of energy and experience from the victory instantly pushed Yunche forward by 3 additional levels, raising him to level 33. Watching from a distance, the students and teachers remained frozen in stunned silence. Xiao Xi could only marvel at how unbelievably strong his friend had become, while Yun Yin and Yun Cha struggled to accept that he had truly defeated such a terrifying monster on his own. Standing amid the raining crystal fragments, Yunche noticed 2 brilliant beams of golden light rising from the monster's remains, confirming the legendary items he had obtained. Before he could inspect them, however, he was forced to leap away quickly as the gigantic headless body of the Wandering Lord began collapsing toward the ground. Yin Cha quickly shouted a warning after realizing that Yunche was still standing atop the collapsing body of the giant monster. Moving with impressive agility, Yunche skillfully navigated the crumbling remains, leaping from one falling fragment to another until he safely reached the ground. As the dust slowly cleared, the fall of the Wandering Lord revealed a massive opening carved into the mountainside. Inside the broken mountain lay a vast and shadowy cavern, its floors scattered with the skeletal remains of both wanderer monsters and fallen humans. Studying the ancient battlefield, Yunche came to a grave realization. Long ago, an even more powerful and ancient Wandering Lord must have been born in this very place. The countless scars and destruction across the dungeon finally made sense to him. While examining the hollow mountain, his attention was suddenly drawn to a lone figure standing high above against the dim light. His heart skipped when he recognized the armored warrior frozen in a final stance of defiance, a great sword planted firmly into the ground before him. A system notification soon confirmed what seemed impossible. The body belonged to Xiao Xi, the man also known by the nickname Xiao Benben. Yin Che could only murmur his friend's name in disbelief. Before long, the other students and teachers reached the scene and were equally stunned by the discovery. Yun Cha, her voice filled with amazement, identified the warrior as the infamous traitor Xiao Ben. She admitted that although she had always heard this was the location where he had been killed by the hero Ding Kuan, she had never imagined the scene would look like this. The battlefield clearly showed signs of a desperate last stand against countless enemies, both monsters and humans. The proud and unyielding figure before them stood in stark contrast to the statue displayed in the Modern History Memorial Hall, which depicted him humiliated beneath someone's foot. Yun Cha remarked that the figure before them did not resemble someone who had been easily defeated. Yun Che remained silent, his expression heavy with grief as he looked at the remains of his fallen friend. After a long pause, Xiao Xi, the warrior's great-grandson, finally spoke. He told Yun Che that even if it sounded hard to believe, he had begun to think that his great-grandfather might never have been the villain history claimed. Standing before the remains, he carefully explained the truth he had pieced together. During his childhood, he had spent countless hours searching through historical records about his great-grandfather. Yet the parts describing his actual experiences were always frustratingly vague and incomplete. Even so, he had managed to uncover a few important clues. Among them was the strange habit his great-grandfather had of entering dungeons far below his actual level. That discovery led him to a question he could not ignore. Why would an S-rank professional, someone who had surpassed level 60, ever come to a low-level dungeon like this one? With growing certainty, he shared the answer he had reached. This dungeon was one of the rare places capable of spawning a wandering lord, a monster able to gather every creature in a dungeon and eventually lead them into the outside world, creating a massive disaster. He explained that in those earlier times, the government lacked enough soldiers to guard against the constant danger of monsters emerging from dungeons. Because of that, they depended on a small number of powerful and responsible professionals who regularly eliminated the most dangerous threats before they could grow. His great-grandfather, he said with quiet pride, had been one of those individuals. Rather than betraying humanity, he had likely entered this dungeon to stop a catastrophe before it could happen. As Yin Che listened without speaking, Xiao Xi's earlier confidence slowly weakened. He admitted that most people probably believed he was simply inventing a story, and that even members of his own family thought he was only seeking comfort by imagining a better truth. Believing that he had only been twisting the vague historical records into a story he wished were true, Xiao Xi's hope began to collapse. Just as he was about to fall silent, a hand gently rested on his shoulder. Looking up, he saw Yun Che standing beside him with a calm and understanding smile as he quietly expressed his belief in him. Yun Cha and Yun Yin watched the moment unfold with visible shock and admiration, while Xiao Xi himself was left completely speechless, overwhelmed by the sincerity behind such a simple declaration of trust. For Yun Che, the sight of the fallen warrior stirred a flood of memories about his old friend and comrade, Xiao Benben, whose heroic legacy had been cruelly distorted by history. He remembered the boy's youthful arrogance, the way he proudly claimed that his natural talent meant he needed no master and would soon surpass Yun Che himself. Yet he also recalled the same boy panicking when situations grew out of control, shouting desperately for help when surrounded by monsters, only to stubbornly deny afterward that he had needed saving at all, his pride deeply wounded. Yun Che remembered the strange habit his friend had of secretly training harder than anyone else, then casually showing off the results as if it had come easily. He thought about how Xiao Benben always chose the weakest shield bearer class, the sword guard, simply because the other shield classes were too slow to keep up with Yun Chi's reckless fighting style. No matter how often he tried to slip away alone to train, Yun Che always seemed to run into him again, with Xiao Benben offering excuses that he simply could not resist a good battle and that saving people was something that just happened along the way. Now standing before the remains of that same stubborn friend, Yun Che felt a renewed sense of purpose ignite within him. With a quiet but firm resolve, he vowed that for Xiao Benben's sake, he would eventually settle the score with the Ding family, the ones responsible for the suffering that had followed his friend even after death. At the Ding family residence, Ding Su was urgently recounting the events of the dungeon expedition to his skeptical father and uncle. Despite their doubtful expressions, he insisted that every word was true and that Yunche really possessed such incredible strength, even suggesting they confirm it with a teacher who had led the expedition if they still questioned him. He explained that he himself had originally been barred from entering the dungeon due to his low level, forcing him to remain outside and wait until the survivors eventually emerged. The scene shifted back to that moment, where the returning students were filled with excitement and disbelief. From a distance, they had all witnessed the fall of the massive Wandering Lord, and the story of someone defeating a rare hidden boss over level 40 had already begun spreading among them. The achievement felt almost impossible, far beyond anything they had imagined witnessing firsthand. Listening to their discussions, Ding Su soon learned that the one responsible was Yunche. The realization stunned him, especially since even the highly respected Yun Cha had been present among the students. Yet someone even stronger had emerged from the same group. The mystery of Yun Chi's true identity left him deeply unsettled. Returning to the present, the third head of the Ding family listened to the report in silence for a long moment before slowly rising from his seat. With a cold expression, he ordered the family guards to assemble and prepare to follow him to the traitor's dungeon, the place where Xiao Binbin had supposedly met his end. His brother, Ding Yi, stopped him briefly after recalling a detail from Ding Zu's earlier account about the intruders who had appeared at their home. With a dark glint in his eyes, he suggested that members of the Qiao family should also be brought along. Meanwhile, back inside the dungeon, Yunche examined one of the legendary skill books that had dropped from the Wandering Lord, the Golden Light Shield. Without hesitation, he handed the valuable book to Xiao Xi, telling him he should take it and learn the skill since it required no level to use. Watching the exchange, Yuncha could not hide her surprise and asked why Yunche would give away something as valuable as a legendary skill so easily. Yunche answered calmly, explaining that the ability was designed only for shield bearers and therefore had no use for him. He then added that Xiao Xi's great-grandfather had most likely relied on that very skill during his own battles. Hearing this, Xiao Xi accepted the book with clear emotion. Yun Cha observed the moment with thoughtful eyes and remarked that although Xiao Xi might lack powerful abilities, Yunche clearly possessed more than enough. She admitted that even her own techniques, which were considered high-level, seemed insignificant compared to his, mentioning his strange movement that looked like teleportation as well as his ability to summon large numbers of undead. At the mention of those undead creatures, Yin Chi's expression suddenly hardened and a faint glow appeared in his eyes. A forgotten detail about his power resurfaced in his mind. His undead summons were formed from souls discovered within the mirror world. That thought led him to a startling realization. If souls truly gathered there after death, then it was possible that Xiao Binbin's spirit had been waiting in that dimension all this time. The idea filled him with both excitement and nervous anticipation. At that moment, a system notification appeared, confirming that Mirror Walk had finished cooling down and granting him 30 full minutes to enter the mirror world again. Wondering if he could finally locate his fallen friend's soul, Yunche activated the skill without hesitation as familiar purple light wrapped around his body. Stepping into the strange blue-green landscape of the mirror world, he soon saw exactly what he had hoped for. Standing in the distance was a powerful spectral figure clad in full armor, carrying a calm yet imposing presence. Overcome with emotion, Yunche quietly spoke the nickname of his old companion, Xiao Binbin, realizing that his friend's soul had truly remained here all along. Meanwhile, back in the real world, some time had passed as Yun Yin approached Yun Cha and reminded her that they should soon depart because she still had an important audience ceremony to attend. Yun Cha showed little desire to leave, admitting that although they had already spent quite some time there, the events unfolding were far too interesting to walk away from. Her gaze drifted toward the place where Yun Che had last been standing, and she wondered aloud what he could possibly be doing and why he had disappeared for so long, completely unaware that he was experiencing an unexpected reunion in another dimension. Within the mirror world, Yun Che faced the armored spirit of his old companion with a solemn expression. He spoke to Xiao Bin's soul, unable to believe that fate had allowed them to meet again after so long, and admitted that there were countless things he had once wished to say. Yet the long-awaited reunion ended almost as soon as it began. With a trace of sadness, Yunche realized that his friend would never be able to respond because the calm spirit was suddenly consumed by a dark and sinister energy that twisted its form into a monstrous, roaring undead creature. A heavy realization settled in Yun Chi's heart as he understood that Xiao Binbin had truly become an undead spirit, a being driven by instinct rather than memory. Though he had no desire to raise his blade against his friend, he knew there was no other choice. Launching himself into the air, he avoided the creature's attack and prepared for the inevitable battle. As the clash began, purple energy shone in Yun Qi's eyes while he carefully studied his opponent. During the fight, however, something unusual occurred. Fragments of crystal began floating around him, each displaying a different scene within its surface. Yun Qi quickly recognized them as memories from Binbin's life and experiences. Among them, one particular fragment captured his attention, revealing a clear vision of Binbin's final battle against the man celebrated as the hero, Ding Kun. While observing the memory, Yun Qi noticed something strange about Ding Kun's stance and fighting technique, a style that felt oddly familiar to him. Without warning, the mirrored landscape surrounding them suddenly shattered like fragile glass. As the fragments slowly settled, Yun Qi realized that the monstrous undead figure had disappeared, leaving only the calm, armored soul of Xiao Binbin standing before him again. The sudden change left him completely bewildered as he tried to understand what had just occurred. Still trapped within the mirror world, Yun Qi cautiously spoke his friend's name once more. Yet the moment the words left his mouth, the peaceful spirit violently transformed again, twisting back into a roaring undead creature wielding a blade of shadowy purple energy. Yun Qi raised his weapon and blocked the brutal strike, his face turning serious as the truth began to sink in. What followed was a fierce and frantic clash, their attacks colliding with bursts of powerful purple energy. It became painfully clear to Yun Qi that his friend was truly gone, leaving behind nothing but a distorted form driven purely by instinct. Realizing there was no meaning in battling the empty shell of someone he once knew, he attempted to retreat instead. However, when he tried to leave, a system message appeared informing him that exiting the mirror world was impossible from his current position. Frustration surged through him, and with no alternative left, he accepted that he would have to finish the fight. Meanwhile, in the real world, Xiao Xi stood alone with a stunned yet determined look as he clenched his fist tightly. His moment of solitude ended when a large group suddenly arrived, led by Ding Su and Ding Yi. One of them noticed that he was by himself and mockingly wondered whether Yun Qi had sensed their approach and fled in fear. Ding Yi looked down at the boy with a smug expression, remarking that this situation was only becoming more entertaining. Trying to appear unaware of their intentions, Xiao Xi calmly asked Ding Su why he had come and whether he had also arrived to gain levels in the dungeon. Ding Yi dismissed the act with a scornful laugh, telling the brat from the Xiao family to stop pretending. Without hesitation, he accused Xiao Xi of secretly helping Yun Qi break into the Ding residence and steal their belongings. When Xiao Xi attempted to deny the accusation, Ding Su stepped closer with a threatening look, coldly asking whether he truly believed his screams from that night would go unrecognized. The words sent a shiver down Xiao Xi's spine, and the color drained from his face. With a casual and cruel wave of his hand, Ding Yi brushed the matter aside and declared with a sinister smile that the details no longer mattered because he had prepared a small gift for him. The moment those words were repeated, dread filled Xiao Xi's expression. His eyes widened in horror as the Ding family guards pushed a group of exhausted figures forward. They were members of his own family. Staring in disbelief, Xiao Xi recognized them one by one, softly murmuring the names of his grand-uncles, grand-aunts, and finally his mother, who looked back at him with a weary and defeated gaze. Before he could even process what was happening, one of the elderly relatives, his second granduncle, suddenly erupted in fury. He shouted at Xiao Xi to kneel immediately and beg forgiveness from the hero's family and from Ding Su. Lowering his head, Xiao Xi began to say that he no longer wanted to live this way, but his granduncle angrily cut him off, demanding to know what lessons he had been taught about how to behave before the Ding family, and screaming once again for him to kneel. Those words finally broke the last restraint within him. Years of humiliation and buried resentment surged out as Xiao Xi lost control, shouting back with raw anger as he questioned whether the Xiao family was destined to remain the Ding family's obedient dogs for generation after generation. His defiance shocked his family members, who looked at him in horror. However, another relative immediately stepped forward and supported the old man, angrily shouting that for the descendants of a terrible traitor, being the Ding family's dogs was already more than they deserved. The pressure on Xiao Xi grew as a female relative began crying and begged him to stop, asking if he was trying to get the entire family killed and pleading with him to think about his father. She reminded him how hard his mother had worked to support everyone ever since his father had gone mad, clearly trying to make him feel guilty and force him to give in. After a brief silence, Xiao Xi's attitude suddenly changed. Turning around, he raised his arm and pointed toward the skeletal remains of his ancestor on the mountain, declaring that the truth was that his great-grandfather had come to this very dungeon to stop a catastrophe before it could happen. He insisted that his ancestor had only been defeated because many people had ambushed him together, which led to his heroic sacrifice. He explained that he had been secretly gathering information about his great-grandfather for a long time, but had always been missing the final proof. Now, with the scene of that final battle right in front of them, he finally had the evidence he needed. With burning conviction, he declared that his ancestor was never a traitor and that the official history was nothing more than propaganda. Turning back to his stunned family members, he told them that if they revealed this truth to the world, they could finally clear their ancestor's name and escape their life of humiliation. Xiao Xi's voice rose with anger as he said the Ding family had no right to treat them this way, and that their other relatives should never have died because of such a lie. But instead of denying his words, Ding Yi simply burst into condescending laughter, clearly finding the entire speech childish and amusing. Ding Yi then stepped forward with a relaxed and arrogant expression, casually confirming that Xiao Xi's claims were actually true. He admitted without hesitation that Xiao Benben had indeed died in a coordinated ambush and had never been the villain history portrayed him to be. However, his next words were even more shocking, as he calmly revealed that the person who organized that ambush was none other than his own grandfather, the famous hero Ding Kun, who had done it purely to secure power and reputation for himself. The blunt confession left Xiao Xi completely speechless, forced to listen as the truth behind the tragedy that destroyed his family was treated like a trivial story. Wearing a twisted smile, Ding Yi leaned closer and mockingly questioned why the truth even mattered, stating that what people believed was far more important than what had actually happened. According to him, the world had already decided that Xiao Benben was an imperial traitor, and that label alone was enough to define him forever. Gesturing proudly toward the armored guard standing behind him, he continued ridiculing Xiao Xi, coldly asking why it should matter if his actions had shattered the boy's family, driven his father insane, or caused the deaths of several relatives, insisting that descendants of traitors deserved nothing better. He then revealed another cruel fact, pointing toward the kneeling members of the Qiao family, and explaining that they had always known the real story. With a mocking tone, he asked Xiao Xi how he thought some of those relatives had died, hinting that they had been eliminated simply because they knew too much. After delivering this final psychological blow, Ding Yi calmly straightened his tie and gave a quiet but terrifying order for them to kneel. The reaction was immediate, as every member of the Qiao family, even the elderly ones, obediently lowered themselves to the ground without resistance. Among them, Xiao Xi's mother knelt on the cold floor and looked up at her son with tearful eyes, desperately calling him AI and begging him to admit his mistake and stop opposing the Ding family, because it was pointless. And as she cried, she finally revealed the fear that had been haunting her heart all this time. Remembering how his father had already lost his sanity, Xiao Xi's mother tearfully confessed that she could not endure losing her son as well. Her desperate words left Xiao Xi standing motionless, caught between grief and hesitation as the weight of everything pressed down on him. Just as his resolve began to crumble, a soft and familiar voice seemed to reach him through the chaos. The image was of his mother from happier days before their family had been crushed by humiliation, but the comforting moment quickly faded when Ding Su stepped forward with a mocking grin, his face still wrapped in bandages from his previous clash with Yin Che. Irritated by Xiao Xi's silence, he sneered that the boy was hopelessly stupid and suddenly lashed out with a brutal kick, shouting that if he refused to kneel willingly, then he would be forced to do so. This time, however, the outcome was completely different, as Xiao Xi's eyes flashed with power and he calmly raised his arm to intercept the strike with ease. Before Ding Su could even understand what had happened, Xiao Xi seized his leg and, roaring with pent-up fury, hurled him down into the stone floor with such force that the ground cracked apart on impact. Standing among the scattered fragments, Xiao Xi looked down at his fallen bully with steady determination and firmly declared that he would never kneel again. Panting with anger and disbelief, Ding Su quickly struggled back on his feet, unable to accept what had just happened. In a burst of rage, he summoned a huge radiant crystal hammer while shouting that Xiao Xi had suddenly found some courage and dared to fight back. Charging straight at him, he vowed to beat him down and remind him that he was nothing more than a punching bag. But just as the massive weapon came crashing down, Xiao Xi underwent an unexpected change as light flared around him and a full suit of heavy armor materialized on his body, along with a giant shield that appeared in his hands at the last instant, allowing him to block the incoming strike with a thunderous metallic clash. Ding Zu's attack came to a complete halt against the shield, forcing him to grind his teeth in disbelief as the blow failed to move Xiao Xi even an inch. Now standing like an unshakable guardian, Xiao Xi positioned himself firmly in front of his kneeling relatives, placing his own body between them and the attacker. He briefly glanced toward his mother before facing Ding Su again, his voice filled with determination as he struck forward with a heavy punch that knocked his opponent stumbling backward while loudly declaring that the Qiao family were not the descendants of a traitor but of a genuine hero. The sudden reversal left Ding momentarily speechless, while Ding Su struggled to regain his balance, clutching his head as confusion overwhelmed him, unable to comprehend how the same boy he had tormented for years could suddenly possess such overwhelming strength. Rage soon replaced that confusion, and with a furious shout he rushed forward again, insisting that Xiao Xi was nothing more than the punching bag he had bullied since childhood. Swinging his crystal hammer in a broad and violent arc, he attacked with full force, furious that his former victim dared to resist him. Yet Xiao Xi refused to step back and instead faced the strike directly, his armored body absorbing the impact before the force of the clash sent Ding Su crashing onto the ground yet again. The Qiao family watched the scene in stunned silence, as Xiao Xi stood over the fallen youth and calmly declared that he was no longer the weak person he had once been. Meanwhile, far away within the mirror world, another battle was unfolding under far more dangerous circumstances, where Yunxie was locked in a relentless struggle against the corrupted spirit of Qiao Binbin, fully aware that he was confronting his friend at the peak of his former strength as a powerful warrior. The gap between their abilities was enormous, and Yunxie understood that if Binbin had not belonged to a defensive class and lost his rational mind, the fight would have ended instantly. But even so, he still possessed one critical advantage. Yunxie held one key advantage in the brutal fight, as he had personally trained Xiao Binbin and knew every technique his friend used in battle, along with the small flaws hidden within them, allowing him to predict many of the spirit's movements and counter them whenever possible. Even so, the battle remained extremely difficult because the undead warrior still possessed the defensive strength of a fighter above level 60, and despite Yunxie pouring power into the blade of trickery, his strikes barely left any real damage. In the middle of the clash, the corrupted spirit suddenly released a massive burst of golden energy that spread outward like an explosion. Yunxie immediately recognized the move as Golden Light Shield, the legendary defensive skill he had just given to Xiao Xi earlier. Reacting quickly, he braced himself and blocked the blast, his expression turning serious as he realized just how exhausting this fight was going to become. Meanwhile, in the real world, Ding Su, humiliated and furious, roared in anger and launched a powerful technique called Mountain-Shaking Wild Hammer at Xiao Xi. But Xiao Xi, now standing as a powerful tank, stopped the strike head-on and answered with a heavy punch that sent Ding Su flying backward before finishing the exchange with a sweeping shield strike that smashed him down onto the ground again. Watching the embarrassing scene unfold, Ding sneered coldly at his nephew and mocked him for losing to a mere brat from the Qiao family. Growing impatient, he decided to step in himself and declared that he would settle the matter personally before rushing forward with a powerful energy-charged punch aimed directly at Xiao Xi. Just as the attack was about to land, a brilliant flash of golden light erupted in front of him, and he stared in disbelief as Xiao Xi raised a massive crackling barrier of energy, revealing the legendary Golden Light Shield. Standing safely behind the glowing defense, Xiao Xi boldly mocked them, saying the so-called hero family were nothing but cowards who could not even fight him alone. At that same moment, inside the mirror world, Yunxie found himself confronting the exact same legendary ability, as the undead form of Qiao Binbin stood protected behind the radiant golden barrier, while Yunxie unleashed a rapid storm of purple energy slashes against it. Yunxie clearly understood the mechanics behind the Golden Light Shield, knowing that as a legendary defensive skill, its durability was not determined purely by the user's attributes. Unless a single strike exceeded more than twice the shield's endurance threshold, the barrier could withstand at least 10 solid blows before collapsing. However, the technique also had a major flaw, because it functioned like a consumable ability whose energy slowly drained with every impact, even from weaker attacks, and Yunxie deliberately exploited that weakness by repeatedly striking it and wearing it down little by little. Meanwhile, in the real world, the golden barrier protecting Xiao Xi eventually shattered under the constant assault from the Ding family members. Ding simply scoffed at the sight, unimpressed by the famous technique, and with a cruel grin remarked that it would not have made any difference even if the so-called traitor himself had used it. Still restraining the battered Ding Su in a headlock, Xiao Xi answered with unexpected confidence, declaring that if his great-grandfather were truly present, then Ding would be the one forced to kneel and beg for his life. The words immediately provoked Ding's fury, and he released a surge of crimson energy that blasted everyone nearby away, before stepping toward the armored boy and ridiculing Xiao Binbin as a worthless fool who died inside a minor dungeon. He continued boasting that even if the man himself appeared there, he would still be forced to kneel before the Ding family. And to demonstrate his power, he slammed his foot down and unleashed a technique called gravity shockwave, causing the ground to explode upward in a violent surge of force and shattered rock. The devastating attack struck Xiao Xi head-on and made him spit out blood from the impact. Yet despite the damage, he somehow managed to remain standing, prompting Ding Yi to watch with a surprised but amused smile as he commented on the boy's unexpected resilience.